Chapter 531. Hidden Art Pavilion Auction Hall. As expected, as soon as Feng Yun signaled the start of the auction, the sound of bidding began to ring out in the hall. 1,210,000 level 8 spirit stones. In the face of a form amassing pill that can accelerate the condensation of one's soul, you're only increasing the price by 10,000. You're underestimating the value of this energy amassing pill. An old man in luxurious brocade robes mocked the middle-aged man who had made the first bid. Then, he increased the price by 290,000 first-grade 8th level spirit stones, raising the price of the form assembling pill to 1.5 million first-grade 8th level spirit stones. The actions of the old man in luxurious brocade robes completely stunned everyone in the hall, causing the auction hall to fall into a temporary silence. Seeing that no one dared to bid against him, the old man in luxurious brocade robes smiled smugly. He ignored Feng Yun's annoyance and urged, "Old Feng, now that no one is bidding, hurry up and announce the owner of the energy condensation pill." Feng Yun snorted in dissatisfaction at the old man's urging. Doubling the price was a good thing for the auction hall. However, using the method of doubling the price to threaten and intimidate other competitors who wanted to increase the price was something that the auction house absolutely did not want to see. However, the old man in luxurious brocade robes who had just raised the price had an extraordinary background. He did not dare to offend him and could only helplessly wait for the auction to start. Someone has already bid 1,500,000 level 8 spirit stones. I wonder if there are any other friends who would like to bid? 1,500,000 level 8 spirit stones going once. Feng Yun slowly raised his left hand and looked at the 72 private rooms. Only the VIPs in the private rooms could ignore the old man's threat and make a bid. 1,500,000 level 8 spirit stones going twice. Seeing that there were no other competitors in the private rooms, Feng Yun pointed at the old man in luxurious brocade robes with his left hand and was about to shout out the final question. Suddenly, the voice of a bid came from the private room. 1,600,000 level 8 spirit stones. Yu Haoran, who had already opened his mouth and was about to shout out 1,600,000 spirit stones, was slightly taken aback. Then, he leaned back in his chair with a relaxed expression and began to watch the show of threats and counterthreats. This was because Yu Haoran happened to know the old man in luxurious brocade robes, who had raised the price to 1,500,000 spirit stones. He knew the old man's power in Xianying City and his eccentric personality. Originally, the old man in luxurious brocade robes was definitely qualified to enjoy the treatment of a private room with his status and ability. However, he liked to show his face in public and attract attention. That was why he had chosen to stay in the hall with the ordinary people. This was why the arrogant Feng Yun did not dare to offend him. Ouch! The old man in luxurious brocade robes. He had already prepared his spirit stones to trade with the energy condensation pill. But when he saw that someone actually daring to intercept his bid. I don't know which blind thing actually dared to intercept this old man's medicinal pills halfway through. I think you must be tired of living. Old man, watch your words. If you anger me, I'll make sure you don't live to see the sun tomorrow. Faced with the threat of the old man in luxurious brocade robes, a similarly blunt threat came from Private Room 68. The threat was light and crisp, indicating that the person threatening the old man in luxurious brocade robes was a young man. Good, very good. Faced with the threat from Private Room 68, the old man in luxurious brocade robes roared with laughter. Then, he turned and left the auction hall. Ladies and gentlemen, the guest in Private Room 68 has bid 1,600,000 level 8 spirit stones. Are there any friends who wish to increase the bid? You should know that one energy condensation pill can speed up the condensation of one's spirit by 3 times. 3 energy condensation pills can allow you to condense your spirit the moment you break through to the martial ancestor realm. Feng Yun knew why the old man in luxurious brocade robes had suddenly left. However, this matter had nothing to do with him or the auction hall. Therefore, taking advantage of the fact that someone had raised the price of the energy condensation pills, Feng Yun hurriedly stirred up the crowd's emotions, hoping to raise the price even higher. 1,700,000 level 8 spirit stones. A voice called out from private room 52. 1,750,000 level 8 spirit stones. A voice called out from private room 40. Following the sudden increase in the price of the energy condensation pills, the price of the energy condensation pills began to rise. Soon, it reached 2 million level 8 spirit stones. At this point, the price of the energy condensation pills had already exceeded the market price of 3 energy condensation pills. Yu Haoran, why haven't you made your move yet? Thaling had seen Yu Haoran's move just now. He also knew that Yu Haoran had been collecting elixirs and spirit medicine that could help to enhance one's spirit. Now that the price of the energy condensation pills had exceeded 2 million, Thaling was puzzled that Yu Haoran had not made his move yet. I will make my move, but it's not time yet. Yu Haoran shook his head, indicating that the time was not yet right. However, when the price of the energy condensation pills reached 2,450,000, and only private rooms 68 and 52 were left, he began to make his move. 3 million level 8 spirit stones. Although it was only a level 8 spirit stone, the sudden increase in the price of the energy condensation pills by more than 500,000 was enough to shock everyone present. The guest in private room 71 has made his move again, and he's offering 3 million spirit stones in one go. This shows that this guest knows very well about the miraculous effects of the energy condensation pills. Guests, friends, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and make your move. Feng Yun, who was also shocked, quickly realized that there was a business opportunity in this. He quickly encouraged the crowd, hoping that someone would continue to raise the price. Unfortunately, 3 million level 8 spirit stones had far exceeded the value of the energy condensation pills. No one present was foolish enough to throw caution to the wind. Therefore, no matter how much Feng Yun encouraged, no one continued to raise the price. In the end, the energy condensation pills were won by Yu Haoran. Friend in private room 71, I'll remember you. Just as Feng Yun announced that the energy condensation pills had been won by private room 71, the owner of private room 68, who had risked offending the old man in the brocade robe, reminded him in a sinister tone. I'll be waiting for you. Yu Haoran replied unyieldingly with a sneer. Yu Haoran, there are 3 people in private room 68. Chapter 532. Hidden Art Pavilion, Auction Hall. Although the entire auction hall used a formation and special materials to prohibit the use of divine sense, for Thaling, whose soul had recovered to the high level of revered martial artist and was proficient in all kinds of formations, this kind of restriction on divine sense was useless. Therefore, after hearing the threat from room 68, Thaling immediately used his divine sense to observe the situation in room 68. That young man and middle-aged man don't matter, they can't even withstand a slap from He Xiong, but that old man gives me a dangerous feeling. Yu Haoran, I suspect that the power of law that this person comprehended might be a special law related to speed and strength. Thaling, don't worry, they won't find trouble with me. Facing Thaling's worried reminder, Yu Haoran comforted him with a relaxed expression. Because the moment the auction ends, they will face one of the 5 great clans of Xianyang City, the Gao clan, who is ranked 3rd in terms of overall strength. Hearing Yu Haoran mention the revenge of the Gao clan of Xianyang City, Thaling immediately thought of the old man in embroidered clothes who had just left and immediately felt relieved. Then, like Yu Haoran, he looked at the 18th auction item on the jade platform. How is this possible? Thaling couldn't help but cry out involuntarily when he saw that Xiao Mei had removed the red cloth on the tray and placed a piece of golden iron that was about the size of a bowl. Thaling's cry of shock made Howren realize the preciousness of the 18th auction item. Therefore, he quickly recalled his understanding of auctions from his previous life. After confirming the origin of this auction item, the auction process, and the final owner, Howren already had his own ideas for the next auction. Howren, this is black gold true iron, a treasure that can be used to forge Emperor weapons. You must get it. After using his divine sense to confirm that the golden iron was indeed the best material for forging weapons, Thaling excitedly instructed. Thaling, calm down. Howren had to remind him when he heard the uncontrollable excitement in Thaling's tone. Howren, you don't know this, but if you fuse black gold true iron into your natal instrument, it will increase the chances of it becoming an exalt instrument by at least 50% and an emperor instrument by at least 20%. Howren's overly calm behavior made Thaling mistakenly think that he didn't know the heaven-defying effects of the black gold true iron, so he hurriedly explained. Thaling, in my previous life, I once spent some time in the weapon refining sect, one of the 7 top forces. How could I not know about the heaven-defying effect of the black gold true iron on the enhancement of a natal ritual implement? In order to make Thaling give up on competing for the black gold true iron, he had to let him know about the competitors who would compete for the black gold true iron, as well as the chaos that would ensue after the auction. Therefore, Howren said rather helplessly, Thaling, the black gold true iron was the first item to appear in this auction. It was a peerless treasure that caused everyone to go crazy over. Not only did the top forces in Xianyang City participate, but even the top forces like the weapon refining sect and the Xiandao school participated. Although the weapon refining sect, one of the top forces of the 7 top forces, won the black gold true iron in the end, a few forces who were not satisfied with the outcome decided to launch a sneak attack on the weapon refining sect after the auction ended. The martial emperors and martial saints attacked without restraint, and in the end, Emperor Qin was enraged. In the end, not only was the black gold true iron taken away by Emperor Qin, but more than a dozen experts who chose to launch a sneak attack were killed on the spot by Emperor Qin. Moreover, the final price of the black gold true iron was as high as 40 million spirit stones. Are we going to give up just like that? Thaling asked unwillingly. Thaling, don't be disappointed. There will be even more top-tier refining materials that are more suitable for upgrading your natal Dharma artifact. Howren comforted him. This is also why I don't want to compete for the black gold true iron. The black gold true iron is the 59th best refining material in the Tianxian continent. It's one of the few precious materials that can be used to refine Emperor artifact. Feng Yun scanned the hall, but his gaze was more focused on the 72 private rooms. His voice was full of temptation. Whether it's an ordinary Emperor artifact refined through refining or a complete Emperor artifact that has evolved step by step, I'm sure everyone here knows the power of an Emperor artifact. Therefore, without further ado, the black gold true iron starting price is 10 million first-grade 8th level spirit stones. Each bid cannot be lower than 10,000. Let the bidding begin. Before Feng Yun could finish announcing the start of the bidding, a young man's voice rang out from private room 68. 15 million first-grade 8th level spirit stones. A direct increase of 5 million was the first time such a large increase had occurred since the start of the auction. Everyone in the hall couldn't help but gasp. However, what was even more unexpected was that a direct increase of 5 million was only the beginning of the bidding for the black gold true iron. This was because right after the bid from Private Room 68 ended, Private Room 9 followed suit with a bid of 18 million spirit stones. Soon after, a bid of 20 million spirit stones came from Private Room 7. After a short while, the bidding for the black gold true iron quickly broke through the 30 million mark. At this moment, the ordinary people in the hall were already numb from the continuous increase in the bidding price for the black gold true iron. This was because they had never imagined that someone would actually take out 30 million first-grade 8th level spirit stones to bid for the black gold true iron. Although it could be refined, no one knew if it could be successfully refined in the end. The guest in private room 9 has already bid 30 million, Feng Yun shouted excitedly when he saw the bid. As a guest of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion and the auctioneer of the auction house, Feng Yun's greatest wish was to auction off an item at a sky-high price, one that would leave his name in history. Although he would definitely not be able to reach the auction record of the entire Tianxian continent in a short period of time, he hoped that today's auction would be able to break the auction record of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion since its establishment. This would have a significant impact on whether he could continue to host large-scale auctions in the future. Now, he was only 5 million spirit stones away from the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's record. The hope of breaking the record was right in front of him. How could Feng Yun not shout with all his might? To be honest, as one of the few top-notch materials in the Tianxian continent that can be used to refine emperor weapons, 30 million is not a high price. Therefore, friends who are confident in winning the bid for the black gold true iron, quickly show your sincerity and shout out your bid. 31 million first-grade 8th level spirit stones. A slightly aged voice suddenly called out from private room 3, which had never participated in the bidding. Chapter 533. Hidden Art Pavilion, Auction Hall. Originally, Yuhaoran felt that the old voice coming from room 3 was very familiar. When he heard the owner of room 9 take the initiative to show weakness and directly call out the owner of room 3's surname, he immediately remembered. This elder Lu was Lu Guangyuan, who was in charge of selecting disciples from the Yushu Temple when he participated in the sect selection competition. But why didn't anyone mention Lu Guangyuan or the Yushu Temple when he heard about the auction in his previous life? Haha, Elder Wang, wealth is everything in the auction. If you really want the profound gold true iron, you can definitely offer a higher price than me. Lu Guangyuan laughed proudly at Elder Wang's show of weakness. He didn't give the other party any face at all. Even if I lose in the end, I will lose willingly. Alright. They were both from the top 7 sects, but the Yushu Temple didn't give them any face just for a single item. Elder Wang from the crafting sect gritted his teeth and raised the price of the item. Soon after, the bidding for room 3 and room 9 began to increase by 1 million spiritual stones. However, when the price of the profound gold true iron reached 38 million spirit stones, both Lu Guangyuan from the Yushu Temple and Elder Wang from room 9 started to be cautious. Although the fight for the black gold true iron was not as intense as it had been in the beginning, Yuhaoran knew that Elder Wang from the crafting school was determined to get the black gold true iron. This was because Elder Wang had a damaged high-grade Exalted Realm magic artifact that needed the profound gold true iron to repair. As long as the profound gold true iron was infused into the magic artifact, the high-grade Exalted Realm magic artifact would be able to unleash 30% of its power. 30% of the power of a high-grade Exalted Realm magic artifact was close to the peak of the 9th-grade Martial Saint. Originally, he had a good relationship with the crafting sect in his previous life, so he shouldn't have plotted against them. However, Elder Wang wasn't a good person. In his previous life, the two of them had a lot of conflict. Furthermore, the reason why his enemies had found out that he was hiding in the weapon refining school was because of this Elder Wang. Therefore, Yuhaoran planned to add fuel to the fire and join in the fun. 40 million first-grade 8th-tier spirit stones. Just as Elder Wang of the crafting school was calculating whether or not he would be able to shock Lu Guangyuan with his next bid, an even higher bid suddenly came from Private Room 71, which had never participated in the bidding before. Although he didn't understand why the owner of Room 71 would suddenly participate in the auction of profound gold true iron, in this case, with one more person participating in the auction, the final price would be higher, and the broken record could be maintained for a longer time. Therefore, Feng Yun hurriedly encouraged him excitedly. Look, the VIP in room 71 has finally made his move. From the way VIP in room 71 made his move, this old man believes that this VIP must have set his eyes on the profound gold true iron from the very beginning. The reason he didn't participate in the auction before was probably because he didn't care about the low price. Now, when the final owner of the black gold true iron is about to be decided, not only did he make a move, but he also broke the 40 million spirit stones barrier in one move. This is enough to show that this honored guest has absolute confidence in the black gold true iron. So, what are you all waiting for? Hurry up and increase the price. Yu Haoran's sudden move had already made Elder Wang nervous. Feng Yun's arrogance, or rather, his provocation, made Elder Wang feel even more pressure. Coldly looking at Feng Yun, Yu Haoran knew that Feng Yun was trying to increase the final price of the profound gold true iron. Old man, Yu Haoran, am not that easy to mess with. Just you wait, Yu Haoran said through gritted teeth. 43 million 8th grade spirit stones. It was precisely because of Yu Haoran's sudden intervention that Elder Wang, who had originally planned on spending 40 million spirit stones at most, ended up using a portion of the spirit stones he had in reserve. The VIP in room 9 has already bid 43 million spirit stones. I wonder how much the VIP in rooms 3 and 71 will bid. Seeing VIP in room 9 raise the price of the profound gold true iron once more, Feng Yun looked at VIP rooms 3 and 71 with even more excitement. He hoped that they would bid even higher. Unfortunately, after waiting for a full 5 minutes, neither of the two rooms made a bid. Room 71, in particular, voluntarily gave up. This made Feng Yun feel like he had been slapped in the face. Thus, after confirming that no one else wanted to bid on the profound gold true iron, Feng Yun hastened his countdown and directly announced the winner of the profound gold true iron. The Tao Comprehension Stone can increase a cultivator's comprehension and aid them in breaking through bottlenecks, allowing them to increase their cultivation and strength faster. Feng Yun shouted loudly as he pointed at the 19th auction item, readjusting his mentality. The starting bid is 2 million 8th grade spirit stones. Each bid increment cannot be lower than 10,000 8th grade spirit stones. The auction begins now. In the early stages of cultivation, the requirements for comprehension were not high. As long as one's talent and potential were not too bad and one had sufficient energy, one could basically maintain a rapid cultivation speed. However, after one's cultivation broke through to the martial ancestor realm and condensed one's soul, the requirements for comprehension became very important. If a cultivator wanted to comprehend the power of laws and break through to the martial sage realm, the requirements for comprehension were even higher. Thus, when they saw that the 19th auction item was actually a Tao comprehension stone that could increase one's comprehension, everyone in the hall and the experts in the rooms could not help but bid on it. A mere apple-sized Tao comprehension stone can only help a martial ancestor realm cultivator increase their comprehension. It is not worth 2 million spirit stones. Thaling scanned it with his divine sense and knew that the Tao comprehension stone on the jade platform could only be considered an ordinary item. He was afraid that Yu Haoran would bid on it and hurriedly explained. Yu Haoran, your comprehension is already outstanding. In addition to your 100 years of experience in your previous life, your comprehension is not inferior to your own potential. Thus, this Tao comprehension stone is of no use to you. Thaling, don't worry, I know what to do, Yu Haoran nodded and said with a smile. However, when he saw the coldness in Yu Haoran's smile, Thaling knew that someone was going to be unlucky. The starting bid of 2 million quickly rose to 8 million under the intense bidding of the crowd. Actually, the market price of a Tao comprehension stone that could only increase a martial ancestor realm cultivator's comprehension was between 2 to 3 million. However, the Tao comprehension stone auctioned by the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion was slightly larger in size. At the same time, one could not use their divine sense to examine it. This caused the crowd to mistakenly think that the Tao Comprehension Stone was also useful for martial kings and martial emperors. This was also the main reason why the price rose so quickly. Chapter 534. Sorry, there was a lot of work to do at the office today. I've been busy until now, so the update of the first 5 chapters will be delayed. Hidden Art Loft Auction Venue. Since Feng Yuan hadn't directly explained the effects of the Tao Comprehension Stone and the specific cultivation realm it targeted, everyone wasn't too sure about it. If the Enlightenment Stone's effects were not what they had guessed, which was that it could increase the power of enlightenment of martial emperors and martial sages, but only for martial grandmasters and martial kings, then the Enlightenment Stone itself would only be worth 3 to 4 million spirit stones. 6 to 7 million spirit stones was still a loss for the people who had participated in the auction earlier. However, if the price exceeded 8 million spirit stones, even the guests in the private rooms would have to think twice, let alone the people in the hall. After all, the real goal of the VIPs in the private room was the treasures that were about to be revealed. If they wasted too many spirit stones on the Enlightenment Stone, it would affect the subsequent auctions. Seeing that the price of the Enlightenment Stone had exceeded 8 million spirit stones, it showed signs of slowing down. It was still far from the price he had expected. Feng Yuan reached out and touched his nose. 10 million 8th grade spirit stones. Just as Feng Yuan reached out to touch his nose, a bid suddenly came from Private Room 40, which had not participated in the auction before. Furthermore, the price of the Enlightenment Stone had broken through the 10 million mark. I knew it! When Feng Yuan heard the bid of 10 million spirit stones from Room 40, an ecstatic smile appeared on his face, and he slapped his thigh with all his might as he yelled, "That's right! How can the Enlightenment Stone, which is one of the few things in the Tianxian continent that can increase one's power of enlightenment, only be worth 8 million spirit stones? It looks like the guests in Private Room 40 have already seen the value of this Enlightenment Stone and are planning to fight for it. Dear guests, friends, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and bid for such a precious treasure." Although Feng Yuan wanted to exaggerate the value of the Enlightenment Stone to increase the price, he knew that the Enlightenment Stone, which had lost part of its energy, was only worth 2 to 3 million spirit stones at most. If he exaggerated the effects of the Enlightenment Stone too much and the guests in the private rooms won the bid, it would be easy for them to find fault with him. It would negatively affect the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's auction. Therefore, he could only make use of his arrangements to raise the price of the Enlightenment Stone. Consecrator Feng is right. There are very few treasures in the profound sky continent that can be used to increase one's perception. The Enlightenment Stone is one of the few treasures that are most suitable for increasing one's perception. Just as Feng Yuan was urging the crowd to continue bidding, the middle-aged man who had participated in the Blood Dragon Stone auction at the beginning hurriedly stood up and chimed in. Although I, Lin Jiahao, am not very rich, for my son, I am willing to pay 11 million level 8 first-grade spirit stones. 12 million first-grade 8th-tier spirit stones. As if he was moved by the words of the owner of Room 40 and the middle-aged man, the owner of Room 71 immediately placed a bid of 11 million spirit stones. "You Howren, didn't I already tell you that this Enlightenment Stone is worth at most 2 million spirit stones? Why are you still participating in this auction?" Seeing that Yu Haoren had ignored his advice, and not only had he participated in the auction for the Enlightenment Stone, but he had also placed a bid that was 5 times the price of the Enlightenment Stone. This made Thaling very confused and dissatisfied. "Thaling, don't be angry. I don't want to bid for this Enlightenment Stone. I just want to put on a show with someone." Faced with Thaling's confusion and dissatisfaction, Yu Haoren hurriedly tried to console and explain. "Put on a show." Thaling looked at Feng Yuan, then at the middle-aged man in the private room. His confused eyes gradually brightened. "Consecrator." Thowling pointed at the middle-aged man and asked with a smile. It's not just that middle-aged man. The person in room 40 is also a consecrator arranged by the auction, Howren said with a cold smile. You can play if you want, but you have to know your limits. Don't go for wool and come home shorn. Knowing that Howren was taking revenge on Feng Yun for using him to raise the price of the black gold true iron, Thowling did not object. He only reminded Howren to quit while he was ahead. Thowling, don't worry. I know what I'm doing, Howren said confidently. It looks like the VIP in room 71 has already realized the value of the Enlightenment Stone. He has placed a bid of 12 million spirit stones. What are you waiting for? Howren's bid caused the originally worried Feng Yun to heave a sigh of relief. This meant that the owner of room 71 was willing to take a gamble. Furthermore, 12 million spirit stones were enough to satisfy the person who had entrusted the auction of the Tao Comprehension Stone to the auction house. However, right at this moment, room 3 suddenly made a bid with a high price. 15 million level 8, first-grade spirit stones. Howren frowned slightly. He looked at room 3 in confusion. He did not understand why an elder of the Yushu Temple would be so interested in an ordinary Enlightenment Stone. But when he saw the dissatisfaction in Feng Yun's eyes, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. At the same time, the questions that had puzzled him in his previous life were gradually resolved by this idea. All right. I didn't think that there would be such a relationship between the two of you. Since you want to play, I'll play a big game with you. After confirming that there was an unspeakable secret between the Yushu Temple and the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, Howren decided to take advantage of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion because of his deep hatred for the Yushu Temple in his previous life. I didn't think that even an elder of the Yushu Temple would be so interested in the Enlightenment Stone. This means that the value of this Enlightenment Stone is beyond my expectations. If that's the case, I must get this Enlightenment Stone. I bid 20 million level 8, first-grade spirit stones. Hearing Howren directly raise the price of the Enlightenment Stone to 20 million, the sound of people sucking in a breath of cold air could be heard. But then, they recalled that Howren had directly pointed out the background of the owner of room 3. Their eyes were filled with surprise. After all, the Yushu Temple was not only one of the 7 top sects, but also the leader of the top sections. If even an elder of the Yushu Temple was willing to fight for the Enlightenment Stone, it must have the effect of targeting martial emperors and martial sages. Therefore, after Howren pointed out the origin of the owner of room 3, not only did the wealthy powerhouses in the private rooms begin to bid, even the poor ordinary people in the hall began to borrow spiritual stones from each other, intending to participate in the auction. 23 million level 8 first-grade spirit stones. 24 million level 8 first-grade spirit stones. 26 million level 8 first-grade spirit stones. Chapter 535. Hidden Art Loft Auction Venue. The higher the bid for the Tao Comprehension Stone, the better it was for the auction house. Not only would the final commission be higher, but it would also increase the reputation of the auction house. However, as he watched the bidding price continue to rise, Feng Yun even had the thought of killing himself. Not only were there more and more people bidding for the Tao Comprehension Stone, but there were also a few people that the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion could not afford to offend. In the event that the Enlightenment Stone was bought by a few people who couldn't be offended at a sky-high price, only to find out that the Enlightenment Stone was only worth 2 to 3 million, they would definitely be angered by the auction house and implicate the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. At this moment, Feng Yun wanted to charge into Private Room 71 and question the owner of Private Room 71. Why did he expose the identity of the owner of Private Room 3? But if he wanted to protect the reputation of the auction house, he could not do that. He could only think of a way to deal with this crisis. 45 million level 8, first-grade spirit stones. Even though the auction had been going on for so long, A voice suddenly rang out from VIP Room 1, which had never participated in the auction. Not only did the entire place fall silent, Feng Yun could not help but shiver. He knew that the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion had truly offended a faction that they absolutely could not afford to offend. Feng Yun took a deep breath and rubbed his nose again. This time, his pinky was slightly bent. 50 million level 8, first-grade spirit stones. Just as Feng Yun rubbed his nose and bent his pinky, another bid came from Private Room 40. How could he avoid offending the owner of Private Room 1? The only way was to spend a higher price for the Tao Comprehension Stone and not let the owner of Private Room 1 discover the abnormality of the Tao Comprehension Stone. As for the conflict with Private Room 1 over the Tao Comprehension Stone, he could easily find a scapegoat and cover it up. Hearing the bid from Private Room 1, Yu Haoran could not help but laugh happily. Then, he continued to bid for the Tao Comprehension Stone for the second time. 55 million level 8, first-grade spirit stones. Yu Haoran's sudden bid almost made the owner of Private Room 40 choke. This was because he also planned to bid 55 million spirit stones. But after Yu Haoran beat him to it, he could only bid 60 million spirit stones, because this was the only way to make the person in Room 1 give up on bidding. However, no one would have thought that the owner of Private Room 1 seemed to have set his sights on the Tao Enlightenment Stone and directly offered a price of 70 million spirit stones. At this time, Yu Haoran leaned back in his chair with a relaxed expression. He no longer participated in the bidding for the Enlightenment Stone. If he continued to participate, not only would he offend the owner of VIP Room 1, but he might also accidentally win the Enlightenment Stone. 80 million 8th tier, first-grade spirit stones. In order to completely intimidate the owner of Private Room 1 and to reduce the losses of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, Feng Yun directly raised the price of Private Room 40 by 10 million spirit stones under his various gestures. Ninth sister, stop shouting. In Private Room number 1, a young man of about 30 years of age asked a young lady of about 16 years of age in a purple dress with a bitter smile on his face. Even if that Tao Comprehension Stone can help increase the power of comprehension of a peak 9th grade martial saint, it is definitely not worth 80 million spirit stones. Moreover, if the Tao Comprehension Stone can really help increase the power of a peak 9th grade martial saint, with the intelligence of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's owner, she definitely wouldn't take the initiative to auction it off. Third brother, don't try to persuade me. Even if this Tao Comprehension Stone is just an ordinary stone in the end, I will still bid for it today. Faced with the young man's earnest persuasion, the young lady's tone was indignant. Because I can't take this lying down. Then, without giving the young man any chance to persuade her, she directly called out a sky-high price. 100 million 8th tier, first-grade spirit stones. As the price of 100 million spirit stones came out from Private Room 1, Feng Yun, who was on the stage, almost cried out. Yu Haoran was even more shocked and opened his mouth wide. Then, he couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. In his previous life, the Tao Comprehension Stone was eventually bought by a guest in Private Room 53 for a price of 38 million spirit stones. However, he had purposely revealed the identity of the owner of Private Room 3. Not only did the owner of Private Room 1 make a move, but the price also rose to 100 million spirit stones. Yu Haoran knew that while he succeeded in his revenge, he had forcefully changed the trajectory of his future development. Regarding this, he felt deeply helpless. Faced with the sky-high price of 100 million spirit stones, the owner of Private Room 40 didn't immediately bid. Instead, he looked at Feng Yun through the transparent glass. 100 million spirit stones. 100 million 8th tier, first-grade spirit stones. After a year of meticulous preparation for this auction, with the commission from the auction at the end of the auction, this auction's profit would be 300 to 500 million spirit stones at most. Just to curry favor with an ordinary Yushu Temple elder, he had directly lost 100 million 8th tier, first-grade spirit stones. Feng Yun's heart wasn't as simple as bleeding right now. If time could stop, and if a knife was placed in front of him, the first person he would want to cut to pieces would be the Yushu Temple elder Lu Guangyuan. The second person he would want to execute would be Yu Haoran. However, this was just a beautiful wish that couldn't be realized. Moreover, what he urgently needed to do now was to signal Private Room 40 to continue raising the price to avoid further offending the owner of Private Room 1. 110,000 8th tier, first-grade spirit stones. Raising the price was one thing, but in order to avoid further losses, Feng Yun signaled for the owner of Private Room 40 to raise the price by 10,000. Aya, how dare you compete with me? The owner of Private Room 40 had actually dared to raise the price even though she had already bid 100 million spirit stones. What was even more despicable was that the owner of Private Room 1 had only raised the price by 10,000 spirit stones. However, when she considered her own reserves of spirit stones, she hurriedly asked the young man for help. Third brother, lend me 1 or 200 million spirit stones. After this, I will ask my mother to return them to you. Stop fooling around, ninth sister. Don't you see? The young man, who had always doted on the young girl, criticized her sternly. The owner of Private Room 40 is actually an agent of the Sky Fragrance Pavilion. The reason he is bidding with you is because he doesn't want you to lose out. If you continue to fool around, I will take you back to the Imperial Palace now. Forget it. Actually, it wasn't that the young girl didn't understand what was going on. She was just uncomfortable with the feeling of being suppressed. Her only motive was to fight for her dignity. Now that she saw that her third brother was really angry, she knew that he wasn't joking when he threatened her. In the end, she could only shut her mouth obediently. 110,000 8th tier, first-grade spirit stones, going once. After waiting for about a minute, Private Room 1 stopped bidding and Feng Yun hurriedly started the countdown. 110,000 8th tier, first-grade spirit stones, going twice. 110,000 8th tier, first-grade spirit stones, going thrice. After announcing the countdown in 5 seconds, Feng Yun waved his hand and shouted at Private Room 40. Chapter 536. Hidden Art Loft Auction Venue. The staff member who took away the Tao Comprehension Stone did not go to Private Room 40. Instead, he quickly left the auction venue with a deacon and went straight to the Hidden Art Loft's backyard, which belonged to the assistant pavilion master. Thaling, the second treasure of the auction, and also the highlight of today's auction, is here. Just as Xiao Mei walked up the stage with another tray, Yu Haoran hurriedly straightened his body and looked excitedly at the tray in Xiao Mei's hands. He reminded Thaling. Millennium Spirit Ointment, one of the top healing elixirs in the Tianxian continent. No matter if it's missing an arm or a leg, or if your internal organs have been hollowed out, as long as you use the Millennium Spirit Ointment, you can instantly recover to your original state. Feng Yun opened the jade box on the red cloth tray and gestured to the people in the private room and hall. Then, Feng Yun continued to introduce the jade box. At the same time, the Millennium Spirit Ointment is also the top body refining elixir in the Tianxian continent. As long as you rub the Millennium Spirit Ointment on your body while cultivating your physical body, it can increase the grade of your physical body tenfold or even tenfold. This box of Millennium Spirit Ointment has a total of 4 tails. The starting price is 30 million 8th grade spirit stones, and each increment must be no less than 100,000 spirit stones. The auction starts now. Yu Haoran, no matter how many spirit stones you have to spend, you have to get this box of Millennium Spirit Ointment. Feng Yun had already used his divine perception to check the Millennium Spirit Ointment's contents when he raised the jade box and gestured to the crowd. His voice was filled with excitement. Thaling, I can only say that I'm giving it a try, but I don't have full confidence, Yu Haoran said without much confidence. After all, according to the news he heard from the auction in his previous life, the Millennium Spirit Ointment was sold for an unbelievably high price. Although he had plenty of spirit stones now, the top 10 or so private rooms didn't lack spirit stones either. You're not giving it a try, you have to get the Millennium Spirit Ointment. Sensing that Yuhauran's tone was not very satisfied, the Tower Genie sternly reminded him. Yuhauran, the world's understanding of the Millennium Spirit Ointment is too one-sided. In addition to being able to heal injuries and improve the grade of the physical body, the most important function of the Millennium Spirit Ointment is to strengthen the divine soul and increase a martial artist's comprehension by dozens of times. Apart from the effects mentioned above, the Millennium Spirit Ointment is also a type of treasure that can increase one's luck and turn misfortune into blessings. Thaling, don't worry. Even if I have to use 4th-tier spirit stones in the end, I will definitely bid for the Millennium Spirit Ointment. After hearing Thaling further explain the various heaven-defying effects of the Millennium Spirit Ointment, Yuhauran, who was originally not very confident, spoke with a decisive tone of assurance. 60 million 8th-tier, first-grade spirit stones. As soon as Feng Yun announced the bid, Lu Guangyuan, who was in room 3, immediately doubled the price. However, Feng Yun didn't look too happy when the price had doubled. He just stared at room 1. 70 million 8th-tier, first-grade spirit stones. In private room number 1, after the young girl gave the bidding price, she hurriedly turned her head to ask the young man for help. Third brother, if I don't have enough spirit stones, you must help me. No problem, I will definitely help you bid for the Millennium Spirit Ointment. The young man nodded and gave the young girl a promise that made her happy. Closing his eyes, Yuhauran carefully calculated the number of spirit stones he had below 6th tier. After doing some conversion, he was surprised to find that the number of 8th tier, first-grade spirit stones he could use was as much as 3 billion. Moreover, this didn't include the higher-grade spirit stones that could be exchanged for more 5th-tier and 4th-tier spirit stones. Moreover, he had entrusted the auction house with 3 special treasures that could be auctioned off for hundreds of millions of 8th-tier, first-grade spirit stones. Therefore, Yuhauran, who had the resources in his hands, began to bid for the Millennium Spirit Ointment. 200 million 8th-tier, first-grade spirit stones. Originally, the price of the Millennium Spirit Ointment was usually 5 million or 10 million. This was already shocking enough for everyone in the hall. As for the owner of private room number 71, he increased the price by 130 million spirit stones in one go. Not only did this completely stupefy everyone in the hall, even the wealthiest private room owners were also stunned by his huge spending just now. Third brother, lend me some spirit stones. Hearing the owner of room 71 directly bid 200 million spirit stones, the young girl was equally shocked. At the same time, the arrogance in her heart was aroused. Therefore, she stretched out her hand and asked the young man for some spirit stones. Ninth sister, there are about 200 million spirit stones in here. Be careful. The young man took out a storage bracelet and stuffed it into the young girl's hand as he warned her. I know. Placing the storage bracelet with spirit stones on the table, the young girl directly bid 300 million spirit stones, continuing to shock everyone in the auction house. Although the 72 private rooms in the auction house had undergone special modifications that could not only shield them from divine sense, but also change their voices, Thaling had already used her divine sense to check the room when the owner of room 1 had started bidding for the Enlightenment Stone. According to Thaling's introduction and his understanding of the Emperor Qin Kingdom from his previous life, Yuhauran had already guessed who the young man and young girl in room 1 were. He knew that the young girl, who had been aroused, would not easily give up the fight for the Millennium Spirit Ointment. Therefore, Yuhauran was not the least bit surprised when she directly increased the price by 100 million spirit stones. 400 million 8th tier, first-grade spirit stones. If he wanted to defeat the girl in the number 1 private room, he had to make her feel shocked and scared every time he made a bid. He had to make her feel like she was powerless to compete with him. Only then would she finally give up the fight for the Millennium Spirit Ointment. Damn it! Seeing that the owner of room 71 had increased the price by 100 million spirit stones, the young girl gnashed her teeth in anger. She calculated her spirit stone reserves and realized that she could only increase the price by 100 million spirit stones at most, which meant that she could bid 500 million spirit stones. However, based on the tone of the owner of room 71, it was as if 400 and 500 million spirit stones were nothing in his eyes. This made the young girl's heart beat faster. Moreover, even if she wanted to continue bidding, considering that she still had to bid for a gift for her mother, she could only helplessly give up in the end. Third brother, I have something to trouble you with. Throwing the storage bracelet with 200 million spirit stones to the young man, the young girl gnashed her teeth and requested. No! Before the young girl could make a request, the young man shook his head and refused. First of all, the owner of Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion will not easily reveal information about the owner of the private rooms. Even Imperial Father will not allow us to do so. Are we going to give up just like that? Chapter 537. Hidden Art Pavilion Auction Venue. Ninth Sister, don't worry. The young man sneered when he saw the young lady's anger. Although we are restricted by our special identities and cannot do anything that will damage the Empire's reputation, the people in the other rooms will definitely not let the owner of room 71 off. So, just wait, the Millennium Spirit Ointment will still belong to you in the end. Is this all right? The young lady couldn't help but ask. Although her anger was real, the kind-hearted young lady just liked to throw a tantrum. She didn't really want to harm anyone. Ninth Sister, don't be soft-hearted. Seeing that the young lady was about to be a good person again, the young man was afraid that she would do something stupid. As the saying goes, don't show off your wealth. Even without the Millennium Spirit Ointment, the amount of spirit stones that the owner of room 71 revealed just now would have attracted the greed of many people. Moreover, according to the style of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, the owner of room 71 must have an ordinary background and doesn't have a strong backing. So, the moment the auction ends is the moment this person will be besieged to death. Sigh. After hearing the young man's detailed explanation, the young lady couldn't help but sigh. Then, she looked at room 71 with a trace of worry in her eyes. Thaling, that guy really said that. In fact, when the price of the Millennium Spirit Ointment had exceeded 200 million, and only he and the young lady in room 1 were competing, Thaling had already used his divine telekinesis to observe the situation. After all, only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win every battle. That's right. Thaling confirmed with a nod. Indeed, it's exactly the same as in my previous life. This guy still likes to backstab people. After receiving Thaling's confirmation, Yu Haoran sneered. But do I, Yu Haoran, look like someone who is so easily backstabbed? Seeing that room 71 had directly bid 500 million, Feng Yun looked expectantly at room 1, hoping that room 1 would continue to raise the price. However, after waiting for nearly 3 minutes and not hearing any bids from room 1, Feng Yun's face was filled with disappointment. Then, he looked at room 71 with eyes full of resentment. 4 taels of Millennium Spiritual Ointment, according to the market price, should be around 600 million. If the price of the Millennium Spiritual Ointment had increased by a few million, Feng Yun believed that the final price of the Millennium Spiritual Ointment would be at least 700 to 800 million. If he used some tricks in the dark, it was very likely that it would reach 1 billion. However, Yu Haoran directly raised the price by 100 million to 200 million, which not only disrupted the rhythm of the auction, but also made some competitive powerhouses have other ideas in their hearts. After the auction ended, Feng Yun didn't care about the life or death of the person in room 71. However, the bidding methods of the owner of private room number 71 had caused the auction house to suffer losses. Therefore, Feng Yun took advantage of the opportunity when the staff member took the Millennium Spirit Ointment and used his voice to condense into a needle to give the staff member a task. "You want to investigate my identity and threaten me." Thaling, who had been keeping an eye on Feng Yun with his divine sense, successfully intercepted Feng Yun's instructions to the staff member and informed Yu Haoran. "Black Bear, I have a task for you now." With a wave of his sleeve, he tossed Black Bear, who had been hiding in his sleeve, into the room. Afterwards, he gestured for Black Bear to come to his side and whispered in his ear. "These are 2 elixirs that can change your form and aura. Use them to change yourself." After instructing He Xiong, Yu Haoran immediately took out 2 dark-colored elixirs and gave them to He Xiong. "Thaling, use your divine sense to help Black Bear conceal his aura fluctuations." Considering that Black Bear would remain in his exotic beast form even if he changed his form, it would easily attract the attention of others. Therefore, Yu Haoran could only ask Thaling for help. "Of course." While replying to Yu Haoran, a wave of divine sense landed on Black Bear's body. Yu Haoran glanced at Black Bear and closed his eyes to sense it. He nodded in satisfaction and gestured for Black Bear to leave the room. Rank 5, Grade 3 Mystical Ginseng Fruit. It can directly increase one's cultivation without any side effect. Rank 5, Grade 3 Mystical Ginseng Fruit. It can help a martial emperor to directly break through a small realm. It can also help a martial king to directly break through 2 small realms. Feng Yun opened the wooden box that Xiao Mei had brought up and adjusted his state of mind. He pointed at the spirit fruit in the box and introduced it. The starting price for the Rank 5, Grade 3 Mystical Ginseng Fruit is 10 million Rank 8, Grade 1 Spiritual Stones. Each increment must not be less than 50,000 spiritual stones. The auction begins now. 13 million Rank 8, Grade 1 Spiritual Stones. 15 million Rank 8, Grade 1 Spiritual Stones. 16 million Rank 8, Grade 1 Spiritual Stones. The mystical ginseng fruit, which could increase one's cultivation without any side effects, immediately caused another round of frenzied bidding. However, Yu Haoran did not participate. "Yu Haoran, are you not interested in the mystical ginseng fruit?" Seeing that Yu Haoran did not participate in the bidding, Thaling asked in confusion. After all, with Yu Haoran's cultivation in alchemy, a top spirit fruit like the mystical ginseng fruit would definitely be able to refine higher quality and more effective pills. Logically speaking, he should not give up on competing. "How could I not be interested? It's just that the time is not right." With a chuckle, Yu Haoran explained while paying attention to the rising bidding price. When the price of the mystical ginseng fruit reached 40 million spiritual stones, he directly shouted, 60 million Rank 8, Grade 1 spiritual stones. Directly raising the price by 20 million spiritual stones not only showed the wealth of the owner of Private Room 71, but also his determination to win. This made the people who wanted to continue bidding immediately give up. On the high platform, Feng Yun no longer cared about the gazes of the crowd. He stared angrily at Private Room 71. According to the market price, the mystical ginseng fruit was worth about 70 million spiritual stones. If it was auctioned, it should be able to sell for about 100 million spiritual stones. However, Yu Haoran's bid had caused the auction house to lose more than 30 million Rank 8, Grade 1 spiritual stones. How could this not anger Feng Yun? Consecrator Feng, no one has bid for 3 minutes. Are you still not going to announce the final owner of the mystical ginseng fruit? Ignoring Feng Yun's hateful gaze, Yu Haoran waited for 3 minutes before announcing loudly. Private Room 71 has successfully won the mystical ginseng fruit for 60 million Rank 8, Grade 1 spiritual stones. In his anger, Qin Yun had forgotten to count down and directly announced that the mystical ginseng fruit was won by Yu Haoran. Chapter 538. Hidden Art Loft Auction Venue. 1 minute later, a beautiful young woman in a red corset dress walked up the stage. She had long black hair, a face as beautiful as a flower, and a devilish figure. Feng Yun bowed respectfully to the beautiful young woman, then walked down the stage and quickly left the auction venue. Ladies and gentlemen, as Elder Feng has some urgent matters to attend to, I will personally host the following auction. After Feng Yun walked down the stage, the beautiful young woman introduced him with a smile. My surname is Jiang and my name is Yen. I am currently the Deputy Pavilion Leader of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. Those who knew and were familiar with the beautiful young woman felt a little nervous when they heard that she would be hosting the following auction. After all, Jiang Yen was qualified to become the Deputy Pavilion Leader of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion not only because of her cultivation, but also because of her outstanding business mind. Those who had only heard of the Deputy Pavilion Leader of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion but had never seen her in person were nervous and excited. After carefully observing the beautiful young woman's appearance and temperament, Yu Haoran could not help but guess to himself, could she be Zhao Sinyu's biological mother? After all, the Deputy Pavilion Leader of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion was behind his conflicts with Zhao Sinyu and Zhao Ji. After hearing Yu Haoran's guess, Thaling suddenly thought of the special relationship between Zhao Sinyu and Zhao Ji and the Deputy Pavilion Leader of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. She quickly used her divine thought to carefully observe Jiang Yen. After that, Thaling frowned and said, Yu Haoran, that's not right. This woman's aura has nothing to do with Zhao Sinyu, and she is a woman who has never given birth. After hearing Thaling's explanation, Yu Haoran shook his head and continued to guess. Could I have guessed wrongly? Zhao Sinyu's mother is the Deputy Pavilion Leader of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, who is as quiet as jade? Then, he shook his head hard and threw the private matters about Zhao Sinyu and the Deputy Pavilion Leader of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion out of his mind. He then continued to pay attention to the next auction item. Originally, according to the order of the auction in his previous life, the next item to be auctioned should be a purple flame sacred jade. However, when Jiang Yen removed the red cloth on the tray that Xiao Mei was carrying and revealed the pill bottle that he was incomparably familiar with, he knew that his actions had once again disrupted the following auction process. Yu Haoran was already used to this. Ladies and gentlemen, this auction item was added at the last minute, because the pills in the pill bottle are very special. Jiang Yen smiled as she picked up the pill bottle on the tray and poured the pills into her palm. Deputy Pavilion Master Jiang, although a 6th level, first-grade blood coagulation pill is considered a treasure, isn't it making a mountain out of a molehill by auctioning it? Although they were unable to use their divine sense to observe it, some of the masters present who were proficient in alchemy were still able to distinguish the specific origin and grade of this pill from the color and smell of the pill that Jiang Yen had poured into her palm. Therefore, some people began to question Jiang Yen. This friend who is proficient in alchemy is right. Jiang Yen nodded at the person in room 12 who questioned her and smiled. If it was just an ordinary 6th level, first-grade blood coagulation pill, it would indeed not be suitable to be auctioned. But what if this blood coagulation pill has been infused with crystal marrow? Pavilion Master Jiang, you said that this blood coagulation pill has been infused with crystal marrow? Hearing Jiang Yan's further explanation of the blood coagulation technique, a shocked voice immediately asked from room 12. That's right. Nodding, Jiang Yen reached out and brushed the hair in front of her forehead as she replied with a smile. I believe that the esteemed guest in room 12 must be an alchemy grandmaster from the Valley of the Medicine Masters. That's right, I am Xiang Wenshuan, and I am indeed from the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Not only was the owner of Room 12 not angry that Jiang Yen had taken the initiative to expose his origins, he even introduced himself directly. Could it be that you are one of the 4 alchemy grandmasters of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Grandmaster Xiang Wenxuan, who is also known as the Broken Hand Pill Emperor? Jiang Yen could not help but ask in surprise after hearing the owner of Room 12's self-introduction. It's just a false reputation, Xiang Wenxuan replied politely. Why is this old man here? Yu Haoran, who had also heard Jiang Yan's shocking testimony, muttered to himself with a puzzled expression. In his previous life, due to his personality and mentality, he did not have a very friendly relationship with most of the factions. He had even formed a blood feud with many of them. But there were a few sects that were an exception. For example, the 5 Poison sect, which was founded on poison, the Weapon Refining sect, which was founded on weapons, and so on. But the one with the closest relationship, which was also the most complicated, was the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Because he had entered martial arts with poison and Tao with alchemy, although most of the alchemy techniques he was proficient in were poison pills, due to his astonishing talent in alchemy and the Valley of the Medicine Master's aloof personality, they had a very close relationship with each other. Especially with 3 of the 4 alchemy grandmasters of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, their relationship was very good. Xiang Wenxuan, who was in private room 12, was one of them. Since you are the Broken Hand Pill Emperor, then I'll have to trouble you to personally examine this pill to prove that I am not lying. Jiang Yen asked Xiang Wenxuan for guidance after gesturing for Sister Qiao to take the blood coagulation pill. No problem. Xiang Wenxuan readily agreed to Jiang Yan's request. Deputy Pavilion Leader Jiang is right. This 6th level, 1st grade blood coagulation pill does indeed contain the crystal marrow of a 5th level, upper grade spirit meridian. After receiving the blood coagulation pill from Sister Qiao, Xiang Wenxuan carefully examined it 3 times and finally confirmed that what Jiang Yen had said was true. At the same time, he also expressed his own opinion. Moreover, the person who integrated the crystal marrow into the blood coagulation pill is definitely a person of extraordinary cultivation. It is very likely that he is a peerless master of the martial honor realm. After hearing the personal confirmation of the Peak Alchemy Grandmaster from the Valley of the Medicine Masters and revealing even more shocking news, both the young man in Room 1 and Lu Guangyuan in Room 3 revealed a strong desire to possess the pill. Yu Haoran, this Peak Alchemy Grandmaster by the name of Xiang Wenxuan, is not only outstanding in his alchemy skills and has the potential to become an alchemy Grandmaster in the future, but his eyesight is also very sharp. He was actually able to accurately deduce my strength through the method of integrating the crystal marrow. Thaling, who had also heard Xiang Wenxuan's opinion, couldn't help but exclaim, Thaling, that old man is actually not as powerful as you think. Seeing that Thaling was completely shocked by Xiang Wenxuan's methods, Yu Haoran explained with a smile. That old man was able to deduce your strength not because his eyesight is so good, but because he has a pair of special eyes. A pair of eyes that can distinguish the origin of power. Eyes that can distinguish the origin of power. After hearing Yu Haoran's reminder, Thaling immediately used his divine thought to carefully observe Xiang Wenxuan's eyes. Chapter 539. Hidden Art Pavilion Auction Venue. Thaling, what's wrong with you? Yu Haoran couldn't help but ask when he sensed Thaling's gasp of shock. Yu Haoran, don't disturb me. Let me think about it calmly. Thaling gestured to Yu Haoran not to disturb him for the time being. He closed his eyes and began to look through the memories of the previous weapon spirit. Thaling's serious look made Yu Haoran gradually come to his senses. It seemed that in his previous life, he had always thought that Xiang Wenxuan's eyes were special eyes with a certain auxiliary function. It was very likely that they hid a shocking origin. Therefore, Yu Haoran quickly shut up and didn't disturb Thaling. he wanted to let him recall the origin of Xiang Wenxuan's eyes. Everyone, the true value of the 6th level first-grade blood coagulation elixir that has been infused with crystal marrow has been clearly explained by the Pill Emperor from the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Crystal marrow can only be nurtured by a 5th-level superior spirit vein. I'm sure everyone knows what kind of heaven-defying effects it has. Therefore, the starting price of the 6th-level first-grade blood coagulation elixir that has been infused with crystal marrow will be 50 million 8th-level first-grade spirit stones. Each increment must be no less than 100,000 spirit stones. The auction begins now. Hearing that Jiang Yan's lowest starting price for the blood coagulation elixir was an astonishing 50 million 8th-level first-grade spirit stones, while Yu Haoran was shocked, he also couldn't help but admire her extraordinary methods. Using the confidence that the Pill Emperor, who was at the pinnacle of the Pill Tao, had given to the crowd, she raised the temptation of the crystal marrow with ambiguous rhetorical questions. Therefore, even if Jiang Yan had directly raised the price of the blood coagulation elixir by 50 million spirit stones, everyone present would have fought for it with all their might. Everyone, please wait for a moment. Just as Jiang Yan announced the start of the auction, Xiang Wenxuan from private room number 12 suddenly spoke up to stop the bidding and then assured the crowd. With my mastery of the Pill Tao, I can completely extract the crystal marrow from the blood coagulation elixir without damaging it. Therefore, no matter who ends up with this 6th-level first-grade blood coagulation elixir, I can help him extract it for free. Thank you for your selfless help, hand-breaking Pill Emperor. After hearing Xiang Wenxuan's promise, Jiang Yan was so happy that she almost laughed out loud. The starting price was set at 50 million, and only the VIPs in the private rooms were qualified to bid. The reason why the VIPs in the private rooms were willing to bid was because of the crystal marrow fused into the blood coagulation pill. Xiang Wenxuan's assurance that he could extract the crystal marrow from the pill gave these experts the confidence to bid crazily. As the host of the auction, how could Jiang Yan not be excited? After all, the higher the bidding price of the blood coagulation pill that had been infused with crystal marrow, not only would it increase the profits of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, but it would also increase her reputation. Of course, the ultimate beneficiary of Xiang Wenxuan's promise to separate the marrow crystals for free was not Jiang Yan but Yu Haoran from room number 71. After all, the higher the final price of the blood coagulation pill, the more spirit stones Yu Haoran would get in the end. This old man is still as cute as before. Looking through the transparent glass in front of him, Yu Haoran looked at room number 12 with a smile on his face and teased him softly. 100 million 8th grade, 1st grade spirit stones. After receiving Xiang Wenxuan's guarantee, the young man in room number 1, who had been determined to get the blood coagulation pill, immediately doubled the bidding price. The reason why he doubled the bidding price was that he was learning from Yu Haoran. This was because the young man in room 1 had discovered that the reason why Yu Haoran was able to win every auction was because he would bid twice, or even thrice the price of the items being auctioned. This way, he could give others a sense of pressure that they were determined to win. Unfortunately, the young man in room number 1 had only seen how forthright Yu Haoran was when he bid, but had not noticed the timing and means of his bidding. Therefore, after doubling the bidding price of 100 million, the young man, who was full of joy and thought that the blood coagulation pill would be his, was quickly slapped in the face by reality. 110 million 8th grade, 1st grade spirit stones. Damn it. The young man in room number 1 could only curse and grit his teeth as he looked at the person who had taken the initiative to compete with him. With his identity and status, as well as the home advantage, even the Yushu Temple, the leader of the 7 top sects, had to consider his existence before bidding. However, the person who had made the bid just now was the handless elixir emperor, Xiang Wenxuan, who had selflessly given his guarantee. This made it impossible for the young man to use his identity to intimidate others, and he could not take revenge after the event. After all, the Valley of the Medicine Masters, which was proficient in the art of alchemy, was one of the top powers in the Tianxian continent that no one wanted to provoke. Moreover, a peak grandmaster in the art of alchemy represented a power in itself, a power that did not lose out to a first-rate sect. If he dared to take revenge on Xiang Wenxuan after the event, his chances of success would be very low. If his brothers found out about this, he was afraid that not only would he lose the opportunity to fight for that position in the future, but his life might also be in danger. Therefore, other than cursing and gritting his teeth, he could only use the higher bidding price to fight for the blood coagulation elixir that had been infused with the crystal marrow. Xiang Wenxuan's bid seemed to have broken the awe-inspiring atmosphere in room number 1. The owners of the other rooms all began to compete. 130 million 8th grade, 1st grade spirit stones. 150 million 8th grade, 1st grade spirit stones. In just 30 seconds, the price of the blood coagulation elixir that had been infused with the crystal marrow had broken through the 300 million mark. The rising price showed no signs of slowing down. Ninth sister, lend me the spirit stones you have on you. I will pay you back double after the event. Although 300 million 8th grade, 1st grade spirit stones were nothing to the young man, he had not expected that a blood coagulation elixir that had been infused with the crystal marrow would appear in the auction. Moreover, it had been infused with the crystal marrow personally by a martial honorable. Therefore, he did not have many spirit stones with him. Helpless, he could only turn to his sister for help. Third brother, there are about 300 million spirit stones in here. Here you go. In response to the young man's request, the young girl took off the storage bracelet on her wrist without hesitation and handed it to the young man. Ninth sister, thank you. After thanking her and taking the storage bracelet, the young man was ready to go all out and push the bidding price to a sky-high price. 500 million 8th grade, 1st grade spirit stones. However, before he could make a bid, Lu Guangyuan from room number 3 made a sky-high bid. 500 million. This was the highest bid in the auction that had been going on for more than half the time. Chapter 540. In the auction hall of the Hidden Art Pavilion. Third brother, are you all right? The young lady asked worriedly when she saw that the young man's face had turned red and his murderous aura was rising. Phew! The young man took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. His expression quickly returned to normal. He returned the storage bracelet that the young lady had lent him and indicated that he was fine. Ninth sister, I'm fine. I just couldn't control my emotions. The young man swore to himself as he stared at room 3 through the transparent glass in front of him. Lu, you better pray that the blood coagulation pill doesn't fall into your hands. Otherwise, Xianyang City will be your burial ground. This day next year will be the anniversary of your death. Other than the young man and the young lady in room number 1, the only other person who could intimidate the crowd was Lu Guangyuan from room number 3. Furthermore, to a certain extent, Lu Guangyuan's threat was far greater than the young man's. After all, the Yushu Temple's tyrannical reputation had been tarnished in the past 100 years. Jiang Yen could deeply feel what Feng Yun had felt earlier when she saw Lu Guangyuan raise the bid to 500 million. She could feel the anger that had accumulated in her heart, but she couldn't vent it. This was because of the special relationship between the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion and the Yushu Temple. If Lu Guangyuan won the bid for the blood coagulation pill, the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion wouldn't dare to ask him for 500 million spirit stones. The blood coagulation pill that had been infused with the crystal marrow was only an item that the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion had auctioned on behalf of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. They could only take a commission of 1% of the final price. In other words, Apart from not being able to ask Lu Guangyuan for 500 million spirit stones, they would have to pay the owner of the blood coagulation pill more than 400 million spirit stones out of their own pocket. This loss was as high as 1 billion spirit stones. If she wasn't the deputy pavilion master, and held the highest position in the entire hidden art pavilion, she would have probably found someone to replace her and left just like Feng Yun had. Since she couldn't leave due to the circumstances, she could only hope that someone would bid higher than Lu Guangyuan's bid. As she thought of this, Jiang Yan looked expectantly at room 71. This was because the only one who truly had the financial strength to compete with the Yushu Temple's Lu Guangyuan seemed to be the mysterious room 71. In fact, Jiang Yan was not the only one. Everyone in the hall, including the owners of the other 70-plus private rooms, was looking at private room number 71 at the same time. They were waiting for the owner of private room number 71 to make a shocking bid. Although the people in room 71 couldn't see his face due to the obstruction of the private room, Yu Haoran didn't like the feeling of being stared at like this. Moreover, he had entrusted the blood coagulation pill with the crystal marrow to the auction house of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. How could he spend so many spirit stones on it? Therefore, in order to prevent himself from being the center of attention, Yu Haoran directly expressed his attitude. I'm not interested in the blood coagulation pill or the crystal marrow. Therefore, I won't bid for the blood coagulation pill. When she heard Yu Haoran say that he wouldn't bid for the blood coagulation pill, Jiang Yan's face was filled with disappointment. Lu Guangyuan, who was in private room number 3, secretly heaved a sigh of relief. As long as the unpredictable owner of private room number 71 didn't bid, Lu Guangyuan had absolute confidence that he would win the blood coagulation pill, even if it meant offending the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. The crystal marrow in the blood coagulation pill was too important to him. It was so important that he could completely change his own destiny. Crystal marrow can only be produced by an upper-level, 5 spiritual vein that has developed its own consciousness and is willing to consume 20 to 30% of its stored energy. An upper-level, 5 spiritual vein with its own consciousness and 20 to 30% of its stored energy is equivalent to nearly 10 billion level 8 spirit stones. If the blood coagulation pill with the crystal marrow can be obtained at a price of 500 million, it would be a blasphemy to such a precious treasure. Originally, when Yu Haoran said that he wouldn't bid for the blood coagulation pill, everyone present thought that Elder Lu from the Yushu Temple would win the blood coagulation pill. However, Xiang Wenshuan's indignant questioning immediately attracted everyone's attention. Xiang Wenshuan's next bid made everyone's expression change. Therefore, I bid 1 billion level 8 spirit stones. I'm going to vomit blood. Did this old man take the wrong medicine? Why is he bidding for the blood coagulation pill? After hearing that Xiang Wenshuan was going to bid 1 billion spirit stones, Yu Haoran was so angry that he stood up from his chair and complained. He had a very good relationship with Xiang Wenshuan in his previous life, and he didn't want his friend to suffer a loss. Furthermore, although Xiang Wenshuan's evaluation of the crystal marrow was not wrong, and the crystal marrow produced by the upper-level, 5 spirit vein was indeed worth around 10 billion spirit stones, it referred to all the crystal marrow produced, not just 1,000th of the crystal marrow. Jiang Yan, who had already planned to suffer a loss, heard Xiang Wenshuan double the price, and the depression in her heart was instantly swept away. Her eyes were filled with gratitude as she glanced at private room number 12. Then, she sped up the countdown. She was worried that Lu Guangyuan, who was in room 3, would continue to bid in the same way. 1 billion level, 8 spirit stones, going once. 1 billion level, 8 spirit stones, going twice. Just as Jiang Yan raised her left hand and was about to announce the final owner of the blood coagulation pill, another bid was heard from room 3. 5 billion level 8 spirit stones. 5 billion. If all of them were exchanged for level 8 spirit stones, it would fill up the entire auction house. The price of such a large number of spirit stones had far exceeded everyone's expectations. Furthermore, 1.5 billion spirit stones was not only one of the top 100 most expensive items auctioned in the Tianxian continent, but it also broke the record of the highest bid since the establishment of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion auction house. However, to Jiang Yan, 1.5 billion spirit stones was a price that she, as the deputy pavilion leader, could not afford to lose. Esteemed guest in room 3, the price of the blood coagulation pill has broken the record of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion auction house. Just as Jiang Yan was about to lose 1.5 billion spirit stones, Feng Yun, who had just left the auction house, returned to the stage. First, he patted Jiang Yan's shoulder lightly, indicating for her to leave. Then, he looked at room 3 and questioned in a tone full of suspicion. According to the rules of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion auction house, we need to verify if you have the ability to pay. Chapter 541. Hidden Art Pavilion Auction Venue. I wouldn't dare. In the face of Lu Guangyuan's gloomy question, although Feng Yun said he didn't dare, he didn't hide the disdainful smile on his face. This meant that he suspected that Lu Guangyuan didn't have that many spirit stones on him. He was questioning Lu Guangyuan's malicious intentions. However, because the price of the blood coagulation pill is too high, I have to check it myself according to the rules of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. Good, very good. Seeing Feng Yun's tough attitude, Lu Guangyuan was so angry that he laughed and said, "Good." Bam. Then, the sound of a table being smashed came from room 3, followed by Lu Guangyuan's threatening voice. "Let's see if you dare to enter the room to check it out." Since the guest in room 3 refuses to check it out, as the auctioneer of this auction, I, Feng Yun, declare that the previous auction is invalid. Seeing that Lu Guangyuan was acting shamelessly, how could the shrewd Feng Yun enter the room? He laughed coldly. Then, to everyone's surprise, he cancelled the auction of the 6th order, first-grade blood coagulation pill. In the history of auctions in the Tianxian continent, this was not the first time an auction had cancelled an ongoing auction. However, this was definitely the first time in hundreds of years. Just the fact that the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion had cancelled the auction at the last minute was enough to cause an unimaginable commotion. "How dare you?" Lu Guangyuan shouted angrily. How dare Feng Yun cancel the blood coagulation pill that he had won with great difficulty? Everyone, according to the starting price given by Deputy Pavilion Leader Jiang and the starting price of each auction, I now announce that the auction for the 6th order, first-grade blood coagulation pill that has been infused with crystal marrow will be restarted. Ignoring the enraged Lu Guangyuan, Feng Yun followed the auction procedures and started a new round of bidding for the blood coagulation pill. 300 million 8th order, first-grade spirit stones. If other people were afraid of the Yushu Temple's revenge, they would not dare to follow Feng Yun's lead. However, they were not afraid of the young man in room 1. Instead, they admired and supported Feng Yun's actions. The guest in room 1 has already bid 300 million spirit stones. I wonder if there are any other friends who would like to bid? Feng Yun, who had long expected that room 1 would be the first to bid, couldn't help but smile with a smug look on his face. Then, he shouted with all his might, filled with passion. Since the more powerful private room number 1 had attracted the hatred of the Yushu Temple elder, the people in the remaining private rooms did not have to worry about revenge. They all began to bid. Although the bidding for the blood coagulation pill was not as high as the first round, the final price was still more than 700 million, and it was successfully won by the person in room 5. Compared to the first bid of 1.5 billion, although the second bid was less than half, Yu Haoran didn't feel the slightest pity. Instead, he nodded with satisfaction. After all, the blood coagulation pills that had been fused with marrow crystals didn't end up in the hands of his friends or enemies. He wouldn't cheat his friends, nor would he allow his enemies to improve their strength with the marrow crystals. Moreover, the reopening of the auction for the blood coagulation pill had caused a rift between the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion and the Yushu Temple. The value of this rift couldn't be compared to 800 million or a billion spirit stones. Ever since the sound of the table breaking had been heard and the bidding for the blood coagulation pill had ended, there had been no further movement from room 3. This puzzled everyone present. The Yushu Temple wasn't supposed to swallow their anger. So what was Elder Lu from the Yushu Temple doing now? Inside room 3. At this moment, Lu Guangyuan's complexion was as pale as his white hair, completely devoid of blood. His resentful gaze was fixed on Feng Yun, who was standing on the high platform, through the glass. This was because he had never thought that the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, which was secretly affiliated with the Hollow Jade Palace, whose life and death depended entirely on the Hollow Jade Palace, would not only go against his wishes, but also openly threaten him. Although he was just an ordinary elder of the Yushu Temple, anyone who was familiar with the Yushu Temple would not dare treat him like an ordinary elder. Feng Yun, who had won the auction and wouldn't suffer any losses to the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, was pleased with himself. As he watched the staff take away the bottle containing the blood coagulation pill, the resentment in Lu Guangyuan's eyes was gradually replaced by boundless fury. Feng Yun Jiangyan, the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, just you wait. Lu Guangyuan stood up and glared at Feng Yun, who was standing on the high platform, as he muttered to himself through gritted teeth. Then, he turned around and left room 3. He left the auction hall, the hidden art pavilion, and Xianyang City. Lu Guangyuan had no intention of hiding when he left. Thus, the staff at the auction hall had immediately noticed his departure and hurriedly informed Feng Yun. Feng Yun only sneered in response. A cold glint flashed across his eyes as he started to prepare for the next item. Sacred Purple Flame Jade. It can contain 50% to 70% of a martial sage's nomological aura. It is the most suitable sacred jade in the Tianxian continent to refine life-saving jade pendant. Feng Yun pointed at a piece of jade emitting a scorching aura on the tray that Xiao Mei was holding. The starting price of the Sacred Purple Flame Jade is 10 million 8th level first-grade spirit stones. Each bid must be at least 50,000 spirit stones. The auction begins now. Whether it was the experts of the top forces or those who cultivated alone, who didn't have descendants and disciples who valued inheritance. How to ensure the safety of their descendants and disciples was the most troublesome thing for these experts and experts. The Sacred Purple Flame Jade, which could contain 50% to 70% of a martial sage's nomological aura, was the best way to solve this problem. Thus, after Feng Yun announced the start of the auction, the enthusiasm of the crowd was no less than when they were fighting for the blood coagulation pill. However, Yu Haoran had no intention of participating in the competition for the Sacred Purple Flame Jade. The reason was that he didn't need to use the Sacred Purple Flame Jade to refine a life-saving jade pendant. Also, the information that Thaling was revealing made his mind not on the Sacred Purple Flame Jade. Thaling, Old Man Xiang's eyes are really the legendary divine eyes of that race? Yu Haoran asked in disbelief. According to Thaling's careful memories, after the Ancient Age was destroyed, before the Middle Age was completely formed, the entire world was in an environment where stars were colliding and spiritual energy was tyrannical. A special race appeared between the heavens and the earth. The appearance and structure of this race were very similar to the current human race. However, their bodies were like strange beasts. All of them were giants over 100 meters tall. Moreover, the people of this race all had an extra eye on their foreheads. Chapter 542. Due to some delays, the 5th chapter will be postponed to after 9 o'clock. Hidden Art Pavilion Auction Venue. Based on the different physiques at birth, the eyes of every member of the mysterious race had different functions. Some eyes could shoot out the light of destruction, directly destroying everything that the eyes could see. Some eyes could shoot out the light of life, giving birth to new life out of thin air. Some eyes could shoot out the light of illusion, seeing through all illusions in the world. Some eyes could shoot out the light of origin, seeing through the essence of the world, etc. According to Thaling's speculation, Xiang Wenxuan's eyes were very likely inherited from the bloodline of that mysterious race. His eyes had a trace of the eye of origin that could see through the essence of the world. Even more coincidentally, when Yu Haoran was adventuring in his previous life, he had accidentally stumbled upon a ruin left behind from an unknown era. In that ruin there was not much information left behind, and it just so happened to record the mysterious race that Thaling had just mentioned. Therefore, regarding Thaling's speculation, Yu Haoran was very convinced. Yu Haoran, when you feel that your cultivation and strength are enough to return to that ruin, I hope that you can bring Xiang Wenxuan with you. After hearing Yu Haoran reveal the ruin that he accidentally stumbled upon in his previous life, Thaling thought for a moment, then suggested, "Because I suspect that in that ruin, it is very likely that the secrets of that race's eyes are hidden. Even if by chance, you might be able to inherit a certain ability of that mysterious race's divine eyes. If you can use the divine eyes to transform into the power of law, you will have the capital to break through to the martial god realm in the future." Okay. Nodding his head, Yu Haoran agreed to Thaling's suggestion, and he could not help but miss the void spirit mouse in his heart. Because of all the ruins that he had explored in his previous life, nearly 90% of them were explored with the help of the void spirit mouse. Without the help of the void spirit mouse, not to mention entering those dangerous ruins where one could lose one's life at any time, he might not even be able to find the specific location of those ruins. Therefore, Yu Haoran planned to rush to the mountain range as soon as possible after his cultivation broke through the martial arts grandmaster realm to see if he could meet the empty spirit mouse in advance. Everyone, this is an inheritance jade slip that has never been opened before. Does this jade slip record earth rank and heaven rank mental mantras, martial skills with heaven-defying might, or even secret techniques that might allow you to challenge those of a higher rank? I'm very sorry. I, Feng Yun, don't know, so I can't give you an accurate answer. Just as Yu Haoran was thinking about the empty spirit mouse, Feng Yun, who had successfully auctioned off 2 items in a row, took out a simple jade slip and gave an evaluation that everyone found hard to accept. Consecrator, what if the inheritance in this jade slip is just a piece of useless information? What's the point of us spending so many spiritual stones on it? The owner of room 53 questioned in a dissatisfied tone. This esteemed guest is right. After confirming the other party's doubts, Feng Yun explained. It is precisely because our auction house is unable to provide you with accurate information that after discussion with Vice Pavilion Master Jiang and I, we have decided to offer the lowest starting price of this inheritance jade slip since the establishment of the auction house, 1/8 tier first-grade spirit stone. Moreover, the starting price of each auction will also be 1 first-grade spiritual stone of the 8th step. After hearing the starting price and increment of the inheritance jade slip, the room instantly fell silent. Then, everyone stared at the inheritance jade slip on the tray. In truth, the inheritance jade slip was now a gambling item. It all depended on whether one dared to take the risk. Just as Feng Yun was introducing the inheritance jade slip, Thaling felt that the inheritance jade slip on the tray was extremely familiar. After using his divine sense to sense his and Yu Haoran's remnant auras, he immediately recognized the origin of this inheritance jade slip. Thus, he asked in confusion, "Yu Haoran, why did you put the inheritance jade slip up for auction?" "Thaling, this inheritance jade slip is very special. It may be a hidden danger if I keep it with me. Just take the opportunity to get rid of it during the auction. Howren replied solemnly. Hearing the trace of fear in Howren's voice, Thaling hurriedly asked, "What's the matter?" "It's like this. In fact, on the way to Xianyang City after leaving Lonling City, Howren had been sorting out his recent gains and had discovered the inheritance jade slip that he had obtained from the shop that had not been opened yet. Originally, he had wanted to accept the inheritance jade slip on the spot and see what was recorded in the inheritance jade slip. However, just as his divine sense touched the inheritance jade slip, a fatal sense of danger welled up in his heart. Howren had always believed in his telepathy, whether it was in his previous life or in this life. Thus, he had decisively given up on accepting the inheritance jade slip and wanted to throw it away on the spot. However, because he had just left Lonling City and Gao Luanping and Gong Yuan were not far from him, he was worried that the inheritance jade slip would be discovered and taken away by them. Therefore, he simply placed the inheritance jade slip in his storage bag. When he was trading with the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, he remembered to make good use of it and handed the inheritance jade slip to the auction house as an auction item. Howren, you did the right thing." After hearing Howren's explanation, Thaling was very pleased and praised him. Telepathy is actually a kind of reward from the law of heaven for martial artists who have embarked on a heaven-defying cultivation. When most martial artists encounter danger, their telepathy will warn them in advance. And because of your rebirth, your telepathy is dozens of times stronger than ordinary martial artists. Since the inheritance jade slip gave you a fatal sense of danger, it means that the inheritance jade slip does not only contain the contents of the inheritance jade slip, there must be something else. That's right. Howren nodded in agreement with Thaling's deduction, and at the same time stated his ultimate goal. Thaling, the reason why I took out the inheritance jade slip for auction, in addition to using the inheritance jade slip to earn a sum of spirit stones, is that I hope you can use your divine sense to monitor the person who obtains the inheritance jade slip. I want to see what kind of secret is hidden in the inheritance jade slip that can bring me fatal danger. No problem. Thaling nodded in agreement. Just as Howren and Thaling were discussing the inheritance jade slip, the starting price of the inheritance jade slip was only 1/8 grade first grade spirit stone. After the initial test by the crowd, the bidding price immediately soared. Because the starting price was only 1 spirit stone at the beginning, even some people in the hall who originally did not have the capital and qualifications to participate in the auction began to participate in the bidding. This caused the bidding atmosphere in the entire auction house to reach a climax and gradually fall into a state of madness. In just 3 minutes, the inheritance jade slip broke through the barrier of 20 million spirit stones from the initial price of 1/8 grade first grade spirit stone. Chapter 543. Hidden Art Pavilion Auction Venue. Howren, it looks like this Fengyun fellow's understanding and manipulation of human nature isn't any less than yours. Seeing the increasingly frenzied crowd participating in the auction for the inheritance jade slip, Thales heard the rising price of spirit stones. Thaling couldn't help but sigh as he looked up at Fengyun, who was standing on the high platform with a smug expression on his face. That's right. Howren nodded and said with a solemn expression. At the beginning, he used greedy methods to gradually stimulate the gambling and adventurous nature of humans. Then, he used the irrationality of the herd effect to make them completely lose their rationality and fall into a frenzy. I think that the inheritance jade slip will be auctioned off for an unimaginable price in the end. Moreover, Fengyun, who is adept at manipulating human nature, will definitely become an extremely frightening and difficult expert to deal with in the future. As the price of the inheritance jade slip passed 40 million, the frenzied bidding still showed no signs of calming down. And when the price of the inheritance jade slip passed 100 million, those in the auction hall who didn't have the financial resources to bid were affected by the frenzied atmosphere. Like bloodthirsty gamblers, they recklessly offered exorbitant amounts of spirit stones that they simply couldn't afford. It was even possible that they would never be able to earn in their lifetime. Howren, something's not right. When the price of the inheritance jade slip broke the 300 million mark, the frenzied bidding did not show any signs of abating. Instead, it became even more frenzied. Thowling frowned as he sensed that something was wrong with the atmosphere. There's a faint smell of blood. After hearing Thowling's warning, Howren first glanced at the frenzied crowd in the hall. Then, he walked to the door of the private room and opened it a crack. He immediately smelled a very faint smell of blood in the air. Thowling, the source of the smell of blood seems to be that inheritance jade slip. Through the crack in the door, Howren discovered that not only had the crowd gone crazy, but even the auction staff had entered the bidding for the inheritance jade slip with bloodshot eyes. Thus Howren, who didn't have to worry about exposing himself, walked out of the room and stood in the hall. Using his keen sense of smell, he traced the faint smell of blood in the hall. Howren, hurry back! Just as Howren used his keen sense of smell to discover that the source of the smell of blood came from the inheritance jade slip, Thowling also discovered the abnormality of the inheritance jade slip and hurriedly warned him. After returning to the private room, Howren stared fixedly at the inheritance jade slip on the tray. He asked, Thowling, what exactly is hidden within the inheritance jade slip? It should be a remnant soul fragment's soul's soul. Because the smell of blood in the inheritance jade slip could affect one's emotions and control one's mind, even Thowling, whose soul had recovered to the level of a martial venerable, dared not take the risk of using his divine mind to enter the inheritance jade slip. Therefore, his tone when answering Howren was not so certain. Thowling, what should we do next? Howren asked anxiously when he saw that not only had the crowd in the hall gone crazy, but even the private room, which could isolate divine mind and aura, had also been affected by the inheritance jade slip and had fallen into a frenzy of bidding. This, in fact, after discovering the abnormality of the inheritance jade slip, he had immediately used his divine mind to perform a secret technique that could clear one's chi and concentrate one's mind, hoping that the secret technique could calm the people who had fallen into madness. But it was useless. Then, while Howren was using his keen sense of smell to trace the source of the smell of blood, Thowling secretly used the top elixir that he had stored in the Victor, which could calm one's chi and concentrate one's mind. But it was still useless. Therefore, in the face of Howren's request for help, Thowling did not know what to do. Seeing that even the omniscient Thowling could not do anything, Howren, who had been anxious, forced himself to calm down, and then carefully thought about the methods he had at his disposal to see if he had a way to solve the current predicament. For some reason, just as he was about to check if he had a way to remove the bewitching effect of the inheritance jade slip, a book emitting golden light flew out of the storage ring following his divine mind. Then, the book emitting golden light instantly appeared in mid-air in the hall, and then the book automatically burst into flames. Accompanied by the flames produced by the book, a bald phantom about 1.5 meters tall with golden light all over its body sat cross-legged in the flames. Feeling the evil energy in the air that affected one's mind, the bald phantom opened its eyes slightly, and in its illusory eyes, there was a look of compassion for the common people. Then, the bald phantom closed its eyes, and its lips trembled rapidly, and one golden word after another came out of its mouth. Yen Kirin, Yen Polin, all Buddhas appear. Sha Luoshin, Hu Luoshin, recite Buddha 1,000 times, ghosts leave the body. Body leaves the bed, illness leaves the body, all disasters turn to dust. Every golden word that came out of the bald phantom's mouth would automatically merge into the inheritance jade slip. Every time a golden word merged into the inheritance jade slip, the crazy state of the people present would be cleared up a little, and the smell of blood in the air would also fade a little. After the two golden words dust merged into the inheritance jade slip, Not only did the smell of blood in the air completely disappear, even the crazed crowd had completely calmed down. 3 billion 8th level, first-grade spirit stones. Even though the power of the inheritance jade slip that affected one's emotions and mind was completely sealed by the golden words that the bald illusory figure spat out, the owner of Room 9 was still affected by the last bit of power, and due to inertia, he took the opportunity to shout out an unimaginable price. However, Yu Haoran's attention wasn't focused on the 3 billion bid for the inheritance jade slip. Instead, he was anxiously looking at the bald phantom floating in the air and sitting cross-legged in a cross-legged position. This was because as the people in the auction hall woke up, the dazzling golden light emitted by the bald phantom would definitely attract their attention. Among the people present, there were probably no less than 20 martial sages. Therefore, Yu Haoran was worried that the dazzling bald phantom would cause these people to fight over it, and in the end, cause him to lose the gift that his teacher had given him. However, to Yu Haoran's surprise, no matter how dazzling the golden light emitted by the bald phantom was, the people in the hall and the private rooms did not seem to notice it. They were just exclaiming about the 3 billion price that the 9th private room had bid. What shocked Yu Haoran even more was that the people in the hall and the private rooms did not show any abnormalities when they were in a state of madness just now. It was as if what had happened just now was just an illusion, and everything was wrong. Chapter 544. Hidden Art Pavilion, Auction Hall. Just as Yu Haoran was shocked that the crowd had forgotten their crazy actions, Thaling's surprised voice suddenly sounded in his mind. "Thaling, what's wrong?" Yu Haoran quickly asked. "Yu Haoran, something's not right. Why did the evil remnant soul in the jade slip disappear?" Thaling asked in confusion. Also, why did the crazy crowd suddenly calm down? Thaling's two puzzled questions made Yu Haoran's heart surge with shock. Even the tower spirit, whose divine soul had been restored to Martial Venerable, did not notice the bald shadow that was emitting a dazzling light in midair in the auction hall. It also did not notice the method that the bald shadow had used to seal the inheritance jade slip. This meant that the bald shadow sitting cross-legged in the air was very likely to have reached the Emperor realm, or even a peerless treasure beyond the Emperor realm. Of course, it could be the same as Thaling, the spirit of a magic weapon. It could also be the same as the jade slip, a remnant soul hidden in the golden book. Just as Yu Haoran was guessing the bald shadow's origin, the bald shadow sitting cross-legged in the air slowly opened its eyes. It first glanced at the jade slip, then turned to look at Yu Haoran. How to put it? From the bald shadow's eyes, Yu Haoran saw the compassion of all living beings, the belief of saving all living beings, the kindness of human nature, the evil of human nature, the love of human nature, and the hatred of human nature. In short, from the bald shadow's eyes, Yu Haoran felt a kind of universal love for all living beings. "Do you understand now?" the bald man asked kindly. "I understand." Nodding, Yu Haoran replied solemnly. "Can you do it?" the bald shadow continued to ask. Yu Haoran lowered his head and fell into deep thought when faced with the bald shadow's second question. After pondering for a short while, Yu Haoran raised his head to look at the bald shadow and replied in a firm tone, "I'm sorry, but I can't do it. If you can do it, you can receive my inheritance and ascend to the throne in the future." In the face of Yu Haoran's firm refusal, the bald phantom's expression did not change at all. His face was still filled with kindness as he gave his promise. "Even without your inheritance, I can ascend to the throne," Yu Haoran replied confidently. "If you can accept my inheritance, you will definitely become a god in the future." Faced with Yu Haoran's confident reply, the bald phantom continued to offer an irresistible temptation. "What's the point of obtaining the deity position if you lose your original heart and abandon your original intentions?" Yu Haoran was not tempted in the slightest. His tone was even filled with a trace of mockery as he retorted. "If you can accept my inheritance, You can protect your family and friends forever without any worries. In the face of Yu Haoran's mockery, the bald phantom's expression did not change at all. He was still filled with kindness as he further enlightened and tempted Yu Haoran from a human's point of view. I can break the blue sky with my sharp sword, break the blue dome with my hands, and protect my family with my blood. Why would I need your inheritance? Yu Haoran was exuding strong confidence as he retorted. Sigh. In the face of Yu Haoran, who was not tempted at all, the bald phantom sighed. He put away the kindness on his face and said coldly, "If you don't accept my inheritance, you will definitely die in my hands in the future." Hee. Hearing the bald phantom's death threat, Yu Haoran just chuckled at first. Gradually, his chuckle turned into a wild laughter. "Ha ha! Why are you laughing?" Faced with Yu Haoran's inexplicable wild laughter, the bald phantom asked puzzledly. When the map is unrolled, the dagger is revealed. Putting away his smile, Yu Haoran also scolded indifferently. Fake pity, fake compassion, fake salvation. A person like you can still see through life and death, and become a god in the future. Bah! Speaking of this, Yu Haoran snorted contemptuously. His tone was full of disdain and sarcasm. "Baldy, even if you kneel in front of me now and beg me to accept your inheritance, I will ignore you." In the face of Yu Haoran's scornful sarcasm, the bald phantom's originally cold face was replaced by kindness again. At the same time, he slowly closed his eyes. The dazzling golden light emitted from his body gradually began to converge. Little friend, let time bear witness to all of this. When all the golden light had merged into the bald shadow's body, the bald shadow left behind a sentence and then suddenly exploded. Countless golden lights gathered together to form a book that was emitting a golden light. After the golden book was reassembled, Yu Haoran suddenly felt his divine thoughts stir slightly. The golden book that was originally floating in the air returned to his storage ring. It seems that after helping Master detoxify the poison of the 7 insects and 7 flowers powder, I must ask him where he got this mind-cleansing spell. Staring at the golden book lying in the storage ring with his divine thoughts, Yu Haoran secretly made up his mind. Yu Haoran, it seems that the owner of private room number 9 is going to go back on his word. He did not know what kind of magic the bald phantom possessed. Not only did it make the people in the auction completely forget about their crazy state just now, even Thaling, who had the body of a high-level martial revered soul, gradually forgot about the abnormality just now. All of his attention was focused on the auction of the inheritance jade slip. "Thaling, don't worry, the owner of private room number 9 would never dare to go back on his word," Yu Haoran promised with full confidence. Since the bald phantom had the ability to conceal his existence from Thaling, it meant that Thaling was no match for the bald phantom at all. Therefore, Yu Haoran decided to hide the secret about the bald man's shadow and the golden book at the bottom of his heart for the time being. When he was strong enough to challenge the bald man's shadow, he would tell the tower spirit all the secrets. "Oh, so you know the origin of the owner of private room number 9. Seeing Yu Haoran's confident look, Thaling asked with great interest. "The Devil's Path." Nodding his head, Yu Haoran gave an answer that made Thaling very surprised. How dare he appear in the capital of the Qin Kingdom, Xianyang City of the Alliance of the Righteous Sects? "Thaling, you are making a fuss over nothing." Facing Thaling's surprised exclamation, Yu Haoran could not help but mock him. "What is the righteous sex and what is the demonic sex? They are just some people who want to gain more benefits and instigate the masses. Moreover, do you think that the great Emperor Qin of the Qin Kingdom really cares about the difference between the righteous sex and the demonic sex? To tell you the truth, the owner of private room number 9 is safer than anyone else in Xianyang City. Of course, the premise is that he does not take the initiative to cause trouble and expose his identity, attracting the attention of the ordinary people. All right, at least you have seen through it thoroughly. It was not that Thaling did not know what Howren had just said, but he was affected by the bald phantom and did not react for a while. Chapter 545. In the auction hall of the Hidden Art Pavilion. Dear guest in Private Room 9, I'm really sorry. Feng Yun cupped his fists and apologized in the direction of Private Room 9. Because according to the rules of my Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's auction house, in the face of such a huge price, we must first verify whether you have the ability to pay before deciding whether you can continue to participate in the auction for the inheritance jade slip. So, 3 billion. 3 billion 8th grade 1st grade spirit stones. Even a peak 9th grade martial saint wouldn't carry such a huge amount of spirit stones around with him. Therefore, in order to protect the reputation of the auction hall and ensure the profits of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, Feng Yun had to verify if the owner of Private Room 9 had the ability to pay, just like how he treated Lu Guangyuan from the Yushu Temple. Of course, his tone and attitude were more polite and respectful. No problem. Unlike the arrogant elder Lu Guangyuan of the Hollow Jade Temple, the owner of Room 9 readily agreed to Feng Yun's request to verify the number of spirit stones. However, he also made a request of his own. However, I hope that Consecrator Feng can verify it personally. Sure. Feng Yun nodded and agreed without hesitation. After all, Private Room 9 was different from Private Room 3. Feng Yun didn't dare to enter Private Room 3 because Lu Guangyuan had the means and confidence to attack him. He also didn't have to worry about the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion and the Emperor Qin's kingdom taking revenge on him. However, the owner of Private Room 9 was different. If he dared to make a move in the private room, not only would the martial saints hidden in the auction hall take action, but even the experts of the Emperor Qin's kingdom wouldn't let him off. After entering Private Room 9 for a full 5 minutes, Feng Yun walked out with a satisfied smile. He returned to the stage and said to the crowd, I've personally verified that the guest in Private Room 9 has the ability to pay the astronomical price of 3 billion spirit stones. After Feng Yun's confirmation, the crowd was amazed at how wealthy the owner of Private Room 9 was. At the same time, they were more or less certain that the inheritance jade strip belonged to the owner. Is there anyone who wants to make a higher bid than the guest in Private Room 9? Feng Yun asked in a loud voice according to the rules of the auction house. After confirming that no one else was bidding, he began the countdown and announced with a smile that the inheritance jade slip belonged to the honored guest in Private Room number 9. After the staff in the number 9 private room traded the jade slip of inheritance, Feng Yun continued to auction several treasures. Among them was the third item provided by Howren. It was a black saliva ball that had been newly modified by him. It could not only destroy the physical body but also hurt the divine soul of a 9th-grade martial emperor. Of course, the black saliva balls that he had modified all hid his unique means, which could definitely ensure that he would not be harmed by the black saliva balls. In the end, the black saliva ball was sold to a young man with a feminine temperament in the hall with a bid of 18 million. After the transaction of the black saliva ball ended, Qiao Mei, who had been in charge of transporting the auction items, did not appear on the high platform this time. Instead, 4 tall and sturdy men worked together to carry a cage wrapped in black cloth onto the high platform. Even though the cage was placed down gently, due to the weight of the cage itself, the entire platform let out a dull thud. How is this possible? Others had to remove the black cloth to see the treasure in the cage. However, Thaling, whose divine sense was not restricted, immediately saw the item in the cage and exclaimed in disbelief. Thaling, actually, this auction item is the trump card that made the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion famous in the Tianxian continent. It is also the ultimate treasure that sold for an astronomical price in this auction. Compared to Thaling's shock, Howren's reaction was very calm, but there was a complicated expression on his face. Then, His gaze turned to the hall, to the woman in black who had almost made him lose control of his emotions. "Ruin, is it worth it to take such a risk?" Yu Haoran whispered to himself. Looking at the cage wrapped in black cloth, Feng Yun did not remove the black cloth immediately. Instead, he looked at it with a face full of reluctance. After looking at it for a full 5 minutes, he turned around again and spoke to the people in the hall and private rooms. "Ladies and gentlemen, this auction item is the last auction item of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. It is also the finale of this auction. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to keep you in suspense." Feng Yun walked to the side of the cage and removed the black cloth slightly, revealing the cage wrapped in black cloth. The hardest material in the Tianxian continent, the 9-heaven black iron, was fused with the crimson phoenix blood gold, which can automatically absorb energy. Even a 4th-level Saint Realm exotic beast would not be able to escape easily if it was locked in here. Feng Yun put down the black cloth that he had just removed and patted the cage hard. "I believe that just this cage alone is worth more than a few 100 million. What kind of treasure is locked in this cage that is worth more than a few 100 million? I'm sure all of you know the final value of this treasure. At the same time, as this auction item is too important, the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion has been keeping it a secret. As a result, all of you did not know about it beforehand and may not have made sufficient preparations." At this point, Feng Yun returned to where he had been standing and spoke loudly. "As such, after discussion with Vice Pavilion Master Jiang, we can give all of you 2 hours so that you can prepare more spiritual stones for the auction. Master Feng, may I know the starting price of the treasure in the cage in advance?" For the first time, the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion had given them 2 hours to prepare the spirit stones. Not only was the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's decision out of everyone's expectations, it also made the young man in room number 1 and the room owners of the other forces' headquarters in Xianyang City ecstatic. As for the room owners who could not return to their forces in time, although they were dissatisfied with Feng Yun's decision, it was not as if they did not have a way to deal with it. They only needed to know the starting price of the last treasure, and then consider what method they could use to prepare spiritual stones. According to my discussion with Vice Pavilion Master Jiang, the starting price of the last auction item is 1 billion, and each increment cannot be lower than 100 million spiritual stones, Feng Yun said with a smile. The starting price was 1 billion 8th-level first-level spiritual stones. When they heard Feng Yun's bid, everyone in the hall gasped. At the same time, they gave up on the idea of participating in the auction. Therefore, the people in the hall did not leave like the people in the private rooms. Instead, they continued to stay in the hall and waited for Feng Yun to reveal the final mystery. "Yu Haoran, check if there are any valuable treasures in your storage ring. Quickly exchange them for a large amount of spiritual stones. You must win this treasure during the auction." Thaling used his divine sense to check the ring 3 times. After confirming that it was indeed that special treasure, he directly requested, "Thaling, don't worry about it. I won't be participating in the next auction." Chapter 546. Hidden Art Pavilion, Auction Hall. "Yu Haoran, do you know what the treasure in the cage is?" Thaling asked anxiously in response to Yu Haoran's refusal to participate in the next auction. "I know." Yu Haoran nodded and said with a complicated expression. "The cage is suppressing a snake beauty with the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, White Python. It is a powerful exotic beast with a human head and a snake body. Then do you know what kind of heaven-defying effect the snake beauty has on you human warriors?" Thaling was not surprised that Yu Haoran knew in advance that the treasure in the cage was an exotic beast, a snake beauty with the bloodline of the divine beast, White Python. After all, Yu Haoran had studied the situation of this auction in detail in his previous life. It was normal for him to know what the last auction item was. However, Thaling believed that Yu Haoran definitely did not know what the snake beauty with the bloodline of the divine beast, white python, represented. However, to Thaling's surprise, Yu Haoran actually nodded and said, "The snake beauty with the bloodline of the divine beast, white python, has more ancient bloodlines than ordinary exotic beasts with the bloodline of the divine beast. It has a higher chance of becoming a legendary first-grade divine beast. Moreover, the snake beauty's physique belongs to the 9-in body. If it is combined with a martial ancestor realm warrior, when the physical body and soul merge, the martial ancestor realm warrior's soul will be able to reach the great accomplishment realm, and his cultivation will instantly break through to the peak of the 9th-grade martial emperor realm. If it is combined with a martial emperor realm expert, not only can it help the martial emperor realm expert directly comprehend the power of law, but it is also a powerful law that is ranked in the top 100 among thousands of laws. If it is combined with a martial saint realm expert, the comprehended power of law will instantly reach the great accomplishment realm, allowing the martial saint realm expert to reach the peak of the 9th-grade martial saint realm in a very short period of time, and have the strength to break through to the martial honorable realm." Seeing that Yu Haoran had a very comprehensive understanding of the snake beauty, Thaling was even more puzzled and asked, "Since you know about the snake beauty's heaven-defying effect, why did you give up the bid?" "Kindness and strength." Taking a deep breath, Yu Haoran said with a hint of tenderness on his face, "Thaling, although the snake beauty is a unique exotic beast with the greatest atavistic ability among the myriad of exotic beasts, they are still snake-type exotic beasts. As for snake-type exotic beasts, they don't breed by themselves, but by their nest." At this point, Yu Haoran pointed at the black-clothed woman standing in the middle of the hall and spoke with a tone full of emotion. "Thaling, the woman in black with the black cloak, is also a snake beauty. She's a powerful snake beauty who has reached the 4th level of the saint realm." Upon hearing Yu Haoran's reminder, Thaling instinctively wanted to use his divine sense to check. However, Yu Haoran, who understood his character, hurriedly stopped him. "Thaling, don't use your divine sense to spy on her." "Why not?" Thaling asked, puzzled. "I didn't make it clear just now. In fact, the black-clothed woman is a snake beauty who has reached the peak of the 9th level of the 4th level. She also has a complete Saint Realm magic weapon," Yu Haoran hurriedly explained. "Even so, I believe that a high-level martial venerable's divine sense can spy on everything she has without her noticing," Thaling said arrogantly. "If it were other exotic beasts, even if it were an early 3rd-level martial venerable, I believe that you can spy on them without anyone noticing." Yu Haoran shook his head and said solemnly, "But it won't work on her. That's because the complete Saint Realm magic weapon she has is specially used to restrain divine sense. Even if your spirit recovers to the peak of the martial venerable realm, your divine sense won't be able to get close to her body." "I see." After hearing Yu Haoran's explanation, Thaling nodded. He finally understood why Yu Haoran had given up on bidding for the snake beauty. At the same time, he suddenly recalled the power of a battle between beasts at the peak of the Saint Realm and quickly reminded him. Yu Haoran, a 4th-level 9th-level Saint Realm beast at the peak of the Saint Realm can destroy the void with every attack. The aftershock of every attack can set off terrifying waves. You'd better leave the auction house before the bidding for the snake beauty begins. There's no hurry, Yu Haoran replied to the lady in black in the hall, shaking his head. Although he didn't know why Yu Haoran was unwilling to leave now, he knew that a peak Saint Realm expert could use the possession technique to ensure Yu Haoran's safety. Moreover, he also wanted to see who would get the snake beauty in the cage in the end, and whether there would be a chance to snatch it back for Yu Haoran. Therefore, Thaling didn't continue to persuade him to leave. 2 hours were very short. Just as the crowd was deep in discussion about the treasure in the cage, Feng Yun, who had just left, returned to the high platform. Even Jiang Yen, who had been angered by Lu Guangyuan earlier, also returned to the high platform. However, Jiang Yen, who had returned to the high platform, didn't stand with Feng Yun. Instead, she stood directly next to the cage wrapped in black cloth, as if Feng Yun was still the host of the auction. Feng Yun looked around the auction house and said in high spirits, 2 hours have passed. Everyone, 2 hours have passed. Regardless of whether the guests who left to prepare the spirit stones have returned in time or not, the auction for the last item will now begin. Then, he nodded to Jiang Yen, who was standing next to the cage. Jiang Yen, who nodded in response, reached out her hand and removed the black cloth wrapped around the cage, revealing the treasure suppressed inside. After seeing the treasure suppressed in the cage, everyone except Yu Haoran couldn't help but stand up and stare at the strange beast with the head of a human and the body of a snake in the cage. The snake beauty, it's actually the snake beauty that contains the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, the white python. The young man from room 1 had a look of naked possessiveness in his eyes as he stared at the strange beast with the head of a human and the body of a snake in the cage, mumbling to himself. Actually, it wasn't just the young man from room 1. The other important figures in the remaining rooms, as well as those in the hall who recognized the strange beast, had the same reaction as the young man. Although Yu Haoran couldn't see the situation in the private rooms, he could see the desire in the eyes of the men in the hall. He could see their instinctive reactions after seeing the snake beauty for the first time. Unfortunately, those people didn't know that the snake beauty's 9-yin body was both a good medicine and a poison. If you were truly in love with the snake beauty, and she was willing to give up everything for you, then the 9-yin body would become a powerful aid for you to reach the peak of martial arts. Chapter 547. Hidden Art Pavilion, Auction Hall. The 9-yin body of the snake beauty was both a good medicine and a poison. This was not a legend, but a tragedy that had happened after countless bloody lessons. This was because in the deep sea where the snake beauty lived, there was a man who betrayed his love for the snake beauty and forcefully absorbed the 9-yin body of the snake beauty. In the end, he became a supremacy monster that was neither human nor demon. The snake beauty is a mutated beast that contains the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, the white hound. It is one of the most unique mutated beasts in the Tianxian continent. It is the mutated beast that has the highest chance of returning to its ancestral roots and breaking through the first grade, reproducing the ancient divine beast, the white hound. I'm sure all the men present here are very clear about what the snake beauty represents. This old man won't say anything more here. Although further explaining the various benefits of the snake beauty could further increase the desire of the people present to bid, Feng Yun only briefly mentioned the effects of the 9-yin body after considering the feelings of Jiang Yen, who was standing beside the cage, and his granddaughter below the stage. He then began to announce the start of the auction for the snake beauty. 2 billion 8th stage first grade spirit stones. Just as Feng Yun announced the start of the auction for the snake beauty, a crisp and tender voice came from the second private room. This meant that the owner of the second private room was also a young man. 3 billion 8th stage first grade spirit stones. After hearing the bid from the second private room, the young man in the first private room sneered and directly increased the price by 1 billion spirit stones, showing his determination to win. 4 billion 8th stage first grade spirit stones. Just as the young man in the first private room finished his bid, the person in the seventh private room also increased the price by 1 billion spirit stones to show his determination to win. 4 billion 8th stage first grade spirit stones. 4 billion 8th stage first grade spirit stones. 5 billion 8th stage first grade spirit stones. The heaven-defying effects of the snake beauty and the profoundness that only men would understand caused the price of the auction to skyrocket. In less than 3 minutes, the starting price of 1 billion rose to 7 billion. Moreover, the price did not stop rising. However, unlike the crazy bidding for the inheritance jade slip, the auction for the snake beauty kept everyone calm. Moreover, the people who participated in the auction were only those in the dozen private rooms that were ranked closer to each other. God, please don't get involved in this. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for me. Although Howren had already stated that he wouldn't participate in the competition for the Snake Beauty, he was still very nervous. Of course, she wasn't nervous for herself, but for Xiang Wenxuan, who was in room 12. Howren knew very well how strong the Snake Belle's desire for revenge was as a snake-type exotic beast. Emperor Qin had personally taken action in his previous life, and the black-clothed woman had eventually been suppressed. However, she had managed to escape from Xianyang City by relying on her strength at the peak of the Sage Realm, and the might of a complete Sage Realm divine tool. After that, except for the young men in private rooms 1 and 2, who had stayed in Xianyang City, the black-clothed woman was unable to carry out her bloody revenge. Everyone who had participated in the auction of the Snake Belle had died tragically in her hands. Although the Valley of the Medicine Masters was very famous, the strength of the top powerhouses was not strong. If Xiang Wenxuan also participated in this auction for the Snake Beauty, he would definitely be hunted down by the black-clothed woman in the future. And with his special relationship with the black-clothed woman, he couldn't interfere, but he also couldn't not interfere. When the bidding price of the Snake Beauty exceeded 8 billion, the atmosphere of the auction gradually cooled down. Moreover, the bidding wasn't as wild as it had been at the beginning. 1 billion first-grade 8th-level spirit stones. The young man in private room 1, who had just borrowed a portion of the spirit stones from the young girl, gradually lost his confidence as he bid. After a full 3 minutes, just as Feng Yun was about to ask if there was anyone else who wanted to participate in the auction, a bid came from private room 2. 2 billion first-grade 8th-level spirit stones. Damn it! Seeing that he was being suppressed by the person in private room 2, the young man in private room 1 gritted his teeth and cursed. 1 billion first-grade 8th-level spirit stones were all that he and his sister had. Although he could continue to mobilize a portion of the spirit stones, there wasn't enough time. Brother Tian E8. 2 billion first-grade 8th-level spirit stones is my limit. If you continue to bid, I will automatically admit defeat. Just as the young man in private room 1 was gritting his teeth and cursing, a smug and provocative voice came from private room 2. Sister Jiao, do you have any treasure on you that can be exchanged for spirit stones? As the emperor of the Qin kingdom, the young man called Tian Yi really wanted the Snake Beauty, but his good upbringing made him deeply understand the principle of acting according to one's ability. Therefore, he had already subconsciously decided to give up the idea of bidding. After the provocation from private room 2, he decided to continue bidding. Third brother, I have a birthday gift from Mother here. It should be worth a few 100 million spirit stones. Why don't you use it first? Originally, the young girl hated her brother for participating in the auction for the delicate and pitiful Snake Beauty in the cage. However, as a descendant of an imperial family, the young girl knew that she couldn't offend her third brother, who had the potential to compete for the throne. Otherwise, not only would she be troubled everywhere in the future, but her mother would also be implicated. Therefore, after careful consideration, the young girl took out her most precious treasure, a protective jade pendant, and handed it to Tian Yi. Sister Jiao, don't worry. After the auction is over, I will help you redeem this life-saving jade pendant. After promising the young girl, Tian Yi took the life-saving jade pendant and shouted loudly. 5 billion first-grade 8th-level spirit stones. After the bidding, Tian Yi proudly provoked the man in private room 2. Brother Mengxing, 5 billion first-grade 8th-tier spirit stones is also my limit. As long as you're willing to increase the price, even if it's just a single first-grade 8th-tier spirit stone, I'll immediately give up the bid for the Snake Beauty. Damn it! Meng Xing in private room 2 gritted his teeth and cursed, just like Tian-yi when he heard the provocation. However, unlike Tian-yi, Meng Sheng was participating in the auction alone. Even if he wanted to borrow spirit stones, he didn't have anyone to lend them to. In the end, Meng Sheng could only give up the bid while cursing. This time, after waiting for a full 5 minutes and making sure that no one was bidding against Prince Tian-yi in private room 1, Feng Yun said with a smile, "It seems that the final winner of the Snake Beauties auction is the in private room 1. Wait!" Chapter 548. My apologies, my mother-in-law suddenly fell ill around 5 in the afternoon. I've been taking care of her until now. I've rushed out the last chapter. Please forgive me if there are any typos. Hidden Art Pavilion, Auction Hall. Feng Yun was very displeased that someone had suddenly interrupted his chance to curry favor with the emperor. However, he considered that the person who had interrupted him would likely continue to raise the price of the Snake Beauty and increase his and the auction's reputation. Thus, Feng Yun could only suppress his displeasure and ask with a smile, "Could it be that you're willing to continue bidding for the Snake Beauty?" "That's right," the black-clothed woman replied as she walked towards the high platform. "Then how much do you intend to bid?" Feng Yun asked with a frown. The black-clothed woman's current actions and the hostility in her tone when she replied to his question made it seem like she was looking for trouble. 10 billion level 8 spirit stones, how about that? The black-clothed woman replied with gritted teeth. "Friend, you must be joking," Feng Yun asked with a cold smile as he watched the black-clothed woman approach the high platform. He gestured to the martial saints and martial emperors guarding the area to raise their guard. At the same time, Feng Yun suddenly understood that the Snake Beauty's various heaven-defying abilities were targeted at men. The black-clothed woman before him must be looking for trouble. "You must be joking," the black-clothed woman sneered as she walked up to the high platform. She suddenly reached out and took off her black cloak, revealing a beautiful face that was exactly the same as the beautiful snake in the cage. "Who exactly are you?" Feng Yun turned his head to look at the Snake Beauty in the cage, then at the black-clothed woman who had revealed her true appearance. He immediately thought of a rumor about the Snake Beauty's descendants. He couldn't help but ask, "Who am I?" The black-clothed woman asked herself sorrowfully before laughing heartily at Feng Yun's question. Then, she laughed heartily. 2 crystalline tears flowed from the corners of the black-clothed woman's eyes as she laughed heartily. "I'm Ru-Yin and she's Ru-Yun. We're identical sisters from the same mother." The black-clothed woman's voice was filled with warmth as she pointed at the Snake Beauty in the cage, who could only crawl pitifully in the cage with her powers sealed. Then, the warm voice was gradually replaced by happiness. "Ru-Yun's talent and bloodline are far superior to mine. He reached the peak of the 4th rank 9th rank Saint Realm 20 years earlier than me. At the same time, he has the strength to break through to the 3rd rank Exalted Realm. 20 years of preparation, 20 years of painstaking effort. As long as Ru-Yun shed his mortal body, he will definitely be able to successfully break through to the 3rd grade Venerated Realm and become a powerful elder of our Snake Beauty clan." His happy voice was gradually replaced by anger. "But I never thought that I would never be able to forgive myself for the rest of my life. I was actually deceived by a man whom I gave all my feelings to. Not only did that man cheat me of my feelings and my 9-yin body, he even tricked me into leaving the younger sister I needed to protect. In the end, when Ru-Yun shed her mortal body and became as weak as an ordinary exotic beast, that man's subordinates sealed her strength and auctioned her off. Ru-Yin reached out and tore off her clothes, revealing her snake body. Her expression was filled with anger as she questioned, "Do you know how important it is for our Snake Beauty clan to shed our mortal body? Do you know that after Ru-Yun was sealed and shed her mortal body, not only did she lose the opportunity to break through to the 3rd rank Exalted Realm, she also lost the strength of the peak of the 4th rank 9th rank. I'm sorry, I don't know the person who sealed and captured your sister. Our heavenly fragrance pavilion was only entrusted by that person to auction your sister, Feng Yun explained with a pale face when faced with Ru Yin's continuous questioning. After all, Ru Yin had clearly stated that she was also a powerful exotic beast at the peak of the 4th rank 9th rank Saint Realm. An expert with such a cultivation level was in existence that the heavenly fragrance pavilion could not afford to offend. You don't know each other. Ru Yin sneered when she saw Feng Yun denying that person's identity to shirk his responsibility. My Snake Beauty clan, apart from the ancestral bloodline that you know, and the 9 body that can help raise one's cultivation, we also have a secret technique that can peer into the consciousness of our beloved. Your heavenly fragrance pavilion may be able to hide your relationship with that person from others, but you can't hide it from me, Ru Yin. Feng Yun, do you dare swear on your soul that you don't know that person? Feng Yun, do you dare swear on the rules of the heavens that you have no relationship with that person? Miss Ru Yin, what do you want? Feng Yun was no fool. How could he possibly jump into Ru Yin's trap if he swore on the rules of the heavens and his soul? At the same time, he quickly changed the topic to avoid exposing his relationship with that person. My request is very simple. He directly walked past Feng Yun and arrived before the cage. With just a glance, Jiang Yan, who was already a peak 3rd grade martial saint, was instantly injured. She spat out a mouthful of blood and was forced back 6 steps. Her ruddy complexion instantly turned completely pale. Boom! She extended her slender hand and slammed it heavily on the cage. A deafening boom immediately resounded in the auction hall. When the deafening boom disappeared, Ru Yin discovered that the cage made of the phoenix blood scarlet gold didn't seem deformed at all. Thus, she turned around and made her request to Feng Yun. My first request is to immediately open the cage and let my sister out. Sure. As the snake beauty that everyone fought over, Ru Yin, who was also a snake beauty, had risked being captured and barged into Xianyang City in order to save Ru Yun. Thus, her request was within Feng Yun's expectations. While agreeing to Ru Yin's request would result in losing the astronomical price of 8.5 billion spirit stones, the auction hall and the heavenly fragrance pavilion wouldn't suffer too much of a loss. This was because the snake beauty Ru Yin wasn't the heavenly fragrance pavilion's auction item. They had only been entrusted by that person to carry out the auction. Although they had agreed that the heavenly fragrance pavilion could take 5% of the profits, both the pavilion master and Feng Yun knew that they would at most keep 10 or 20 million spirit stones as a token of appreciation. The rest of the spirit stones would have to be given to that person. After all, that person was different from Lu Guangyuan. He was the person who could decide the fate of the heavenly fragrance pavilion. Thus, even if they lost the snake beauty and couldn't obtain the 8.5 billion spirit stones, the heavenly fragrance pavilion wouldn't suffer any losses. Instead, the auction hall's reputation would increase because of the astronomical price of 8.5 billion spirit stones. Overall, the heavenly fragrance pavilion had made a profit this time. Chapter 549. Hidden Art Loft Auction Hall. Feng Yun. Ru Yin shouted impatiently when she saw that the other party had clearly agreed to release her sister but had no intention of doing so immediately. Since you've already agreed to my request, then you must keep your word. Release my sister immediately. Madam Ru Yin, please don't be angry. Feng Yun hurriedly smiled apologetically at Ru Yin's reprimand while he tried to sound her out carefully. I don't know if you only have one request to release Miss Ru Yin, or if you have several requests. After all, Ru Yin, who was locked in a cage made of scarlet phoenix blood gold, was their only means of intimidating Ru Yin. Before reaching an agreement with Ru Yin and before he could ensure his own safety, Feng Yun did not dare to release Ru Yin, the only person who could intimidate Ru Yin. Ru-Yin smirked as she glanced at Feng Yun with disdain. Her gaze then shifted to the private rooms that had participated in the auction, as well as the dozen lustful men in the hall, before finally returning to Feng Yun. "If I said that I only have one request, would you believe me?" Ru-Yin asked with a forced smile. "I believe you." Feng Yun's heart tightened when he saw Ru-Yin looking around the auction hall. A terrifying thought appeared in his mind. However, the people who had participated in the auction were only customers of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. They were only connected to the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion because of their interests. Their lives and deaths had nothing to do with the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. If Ru-Yin's targets of revenge were only those who had participated in the auction, Feng Yun would naturally be happy to stand by and watch. However, snakes were fickle creatures. Who knew if Ru-Yin was telling the truth? Therefore, in order to ensure the safety of himself and the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, Feng Yun had to have Ru-Yin give him a reason to believe her even though he said that he believed her. "Madame Ru-Yin, the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion is a chamber of commerce. We never believe in verbal promises, nor do we believe in unbinding promises. We only believe in oaths made using the Heavenly Tao. If you can use the Heavenly Tao to swear that as long as you release Miss Ru-Yin, you will not cause trouble for the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. I, Feng Yun, will also swear on the Heavenly Tao to immediately release Miss Ru-Yin." "Swear." Ru-Yin looked at Feng Yun like an idiot and asked with a cold smile. Then, she gripped the cage tightly with her left hand and lifted it with all her might. Originally, it would have required 4 martial ancestor realm experts to work together to move the cage. However, Ru-Yin lifted it gently. Snakes had 2 main ways of attacking their enemies. The first was through poison, and the second was through entanglement. As the king of snake-type exotic beasts, the snake bell was born with divine strength. Even if he did not deliberately cultivate his physical body, the power contained in his physical body could reach the peak of martial king. "Feng Yun, when I asked you to release Ryun, I wasn't begging you. I just wanted to use the restriction in Ryun's body to lure that person out and ask him a few questions." Ru-Yin glanced warmly at Ru-Yun, who was looking at her in the cage. Ru-Yin said coldly, "Since you're unwilling to agree to my request, that's fine too. With this cage that can automatically absorb energy, I don't have to worry about anything anymore. I can avenge my sister to my heart's content." At this point, Ru-Yin looked up to the sky and let out a snake cry. Following the deafening snake cry, Ru-Yin's black clothes instantly exploded. Her body, which was originally the height of a normal human, instantly grew into a gigantic snake beast that was several thousand meters long. Just as her body grew larger, Ru-Yin opened her mouth and swallowed Ru-Yun's cage into her body. Her body instantly expanded to several thousand meters and directly broke through the entire auction hall. The crowd who had escaped from the auction hall were battered and exhausted. Fortunately, the black bear, who had rushed back to the private room in time, used its enormous body to shield Yu Haoran from the broken bricks and tiles, allowing him to calmly appear outside the auction hall. Although the 59-meter-tall black bear seemed rather small compared to the gigantic snake beast that was several thousand meters long, the black bear, who was at the peak of the 5th level 9th grade, was still a colossus to the crowd who had escaped from the auction hall. Upon seeing the young man standing on the black bear's shoulder, most of the people present had already recognized who this young man was. After all, even Tian Yi, who was highly regarded by Emperor Qin, did not dare to directly kill an official of the 6 ministries on the day he moved into Xianyang City. However, the young man on the black bear's shoulder had directly ordered the black bear to attack without any hesitation. How could the people present not know about this matter that had shaken the entire Xianyang City? This stinking brat, when did he come to the auction hall? Why didn't I see him? Gao Lianping, who had also fled from the auction hall in a battered and exhausted state, immediately grumbled unhappily when she saw Yu Haoran standing on the black bear's shoulder. According to my speculations, I'm afraid that vice sect leader Yu has already entered the auction hall and is one of the owners of the 72 private rooms. Although Meng Yun's body was also covered in a lot of dust, making him look battered, his expression had always been very calm. He did not reveal a trace of disgust because of the dust on his body. Meng Yun guessed as he recalled the various information and analysis he had collected about Yu Haoran from the Empire yesterday. Brother Meng Yun is right. With that brat's status, it would not be a problem to spend a large sum of money to get a private room. Gao Lumping nodded and agreed with Meng Yun's speculations. He immediately grumbled unhappily when he thought of himself sitting in the main hall while Yu Haoran, who was his martial nephew, was sitting leisurely in a private room. This stinking brat, since he could get a private room, why didn't he invite me, his martial uncle, in? I don't believe that he did not see me sitting alone in the main hall. Meng Yun shook his head with a bitter smile in response to Gao Lumping's baffling complaints. He did not say anything and only looked gravely at Ruin, who had transformed into a giant snake. Ruin, who had transformed into a 1,000-meter-long snake, was also attracted by the black bear's enormous body. For some reason, when she saw the young man standing on the black bear's shoulder, Ru Yin's originally tyrannical mood actually eased a lot. After confirming that Yu Haoran did not participate in Ru Yin's bidding through the Snake Beauty's special secret technique, she reminded him in a gentle tone. Young man, a bloody battle that no one can predict is about to erupt here. It is very dangerous for you to stay here with your strength. You should leave quickly now. Nodding at Ruin, Yu Haoran patted the black bear and motioned for it to turn and leave the hidden art loft. However, just before he turned and left, Yu Haoran left a message for Ruin with the help of the black bear's mind. Chapter 550. Hidden Elegance Loft. Looking at the back of the young man who gave her a warning, a trace of doubt flashed across Ru Yin's face. She didn't know why the strange young man gave her a warning, or how he knew about Emperor Qin's true cultivation and the supreme-grade Venerable Realm magic weapon he possessed. However, ever since she saw the young man for the first time, Ru Yin felt an inexplicable trust in him. She had only felt this kind of trust from her younger sister, Ru Yun. Therefore, her original intention of slaughtering all the people of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion in Xianyang City, as well as those who dared to have ill intentions towards her younger sister, was greatly weakened. However, when she saw Feng Yun and Jiang Yan being protected by 3 martial saints and 8 ninth-grade martial emperors, she was shocked. Seeing Tian Yi, who had won the bid for Yen Yun, and the young girl, who was protected by a 7th-grade martial saint, Ru Yin immediately decided to kill the 4 of them and escape from Xianyang City. If you don't want to die in Xianyang City, then you have to kill the 3rd Prince Tian Yi, whom the Qin Emperor values the most and who is likely to ascend to the throne in the future, and Princess Ling Fei, who is regarded as the apple of his eye. Just as Ru Yin was about to kill Tian Yi and his younger sister, Yu Haoran's stern warning sounded in her ears. Ru Yin, this is my last message. Although Ru Yun's power was sealed when she shed her mortal body, causing serious damage to her bloodline and foundation, it's not like there's no way to save her. If you trust me, leave Xianyang City immediately. Half a month later, take Ru Yun to the Qinyun Peak of the 100 Qi Gate. I will break the suppression of the cage and help Ru Yun remove the seal in her body, as well as help her gradually recover her damaged foundation. After fulfilling his last obligation, which could be considered as repaying the debt he owed to Ru Yin and Ru Yun in his previous life, Yu Haoran patted the black bear, indicating that it should leave the Hidden Elegance Loft quickly. However, several thousand meters away from the Hidden Elegance Loft, Yu Haoran, who had changed his appearance and temperament, returned to the Hidden Elegance Loft after shaking off some people's tracking through the disturbance caused by Thaling's divine sense. He returned to the Hidden Elegance loft to see if Ru-Yin had listened to his warning and suggestion to leave Xianying City before he angered Emperor Qin. Secondly, he wanted to find Feng Yun to collect the billions of spirit stones from the 3 auction items. She didn't believe that Yu Haoran, who was only at the peak 9th grade Martial Saint Realm, could open the cage that even she, who was a 4th grade 9th grade Martial Saint Realm expert, couldn't break. Even more so, he did not believe that the youth could restore Ruyun's damaged foundation, which even the clan's venerable realm elders could not restore. Elegance Ru-Yin Yu, Ru-Yin Luyun, Ru-Yin an elegance loft of her loft. Since Ru-Yin loft was looking forward to the chance to escape from the cage and break through to the Martial Saint Realm, there would be plenty of time and opportunities to take revenge on these damned humans. Therefore, Ru-Yin secretly activated the complete top-grade Martial Saint Realm artifact in her body and planned to leave Xianying City temporarily. Then, she would go to the 100 Qi Gate and wait for the young man to fulfill his promise. However, just as Ru-Yin was about to leave the Hidden Elegance loft, she glanced at the people who had participated in the auction with all their might. Ru-Yin Loft's heart was instantly filled with hostility. Ru-Yin Loft opened her mouth slightly, revealing 2 sharp poisonous fangs. She deliberately avoided Tian Yi and Ling Fei, as well as Meng Xing, who was also standing in front of a 7th grade martial saint. Ru-Yin Loft's poisonous fangs spurted out 2 streams of poisonous liquid. The poisonous liquid spurted out instantly turned into countless poisonous rain. The poisonous rain seemed to have eyes as it directly rushed towards the people who had participated in the auction with Ru-Yun, as well as everyone in the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. Seeing that Ru-Yin had listened to his warning and started to leave Xianying City, Yu Haoran secretly let out a sigh of relief. After all, with Emperor Qin's terrifying strength, as long as he was the one who attacked, even if Ru-Yin could escape from Xianying City alive, she would definitely be severely injured. At that time, he would have to spend energy to save her. However, when he saw that Ru-Yin had spurted out the unique poisonous liquid of the Snake Beauty clan when she left the Hidden Elegance loft, an audacious plan emerged in his mind. He immediately took out more than 10 poisonous spiritual herbs from his storage ring and quickly melted and condensed them with his dantian fire. In the end, they formed a spiritual liquid the size of a walnut. Then, he ordered Thaling in his sea of consciousness. Thaling, please use your soul sense to disperse the spiritual liquid and merge it with the poisonous rain spurted out by Ru-Yin. Thaling asked as he scattered the spiritual liquid into countless water droplets and quietly merged them with the poisonous rain. Yu Haoran, what are you doing? I'm preparing a way to protect myself in Xianying City. After replying to Thaling, Yu Haoran's soul sense entered his storage ring to check if he could refine enough spiritual herbs to neutralize the poison. Looking at the poisonous rain falling from the sky, everyone subconsciously mobilized their souls and origin energy to form a protective barrier to protect themselves. However, when the poisonous rain fell on the barrier, everyone was shocked to find that the poisonous rain could corrode the barrier formed by origin energy and soul sense. Some masters and powerhouses with rich family backgrounds hurriedly took out their defensive artifacts, hoping to use them to resist the corrosion of the poisonous rain. However, what terrified them the most was that the poisonous rain was able to quickly corrode a top-grade Emperor artifact. Only Saint Stage artifacts could barely resist the corrosion of the poisonous rain. There were less than 10 people with Saint Stage artifacts at the scene. There were only 3 people who had Saint Realm defensive magical artifact. These 3 people were Jiang Yan, the Vice Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, Princess Ling Fei, who was regarded as a pearl by Emperor Qin, and Xiang Wenxuan, the handless pill emperor from the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Therefore, when the poisonous rain disappeared, everyone who participated in the auction was soaked in the poisonous rain except for Jiang Yan, Ling Fei, Xiang Wenxuan, and Yu Haoran, who was not afraid of the poisonous rain at all. Originally, everyone had closed their eyes and waited for death after being soaked in the poisonous rain. After all, the snake beauty's poison was ranked 78th on the Tianxian continent's 100 poisons ranking. It was a poison that would kill anyone who touched it. However, to everyone's surprise, not only did the poison rain not take their lives, they did not even feel the slightest bit of pain. This caused them to be puzzled. Why did my origin energy disappear? Chapter 551. Hidden Art Loft. Yuanli had disappeared. After hearing the warrior's cry of terror, all the experts and strong people who had been soaked by the poisonous rain quickly checked their own conditions. Then, to their horror, not only did they lose years, decades, or even hundreds of years of cultivation, even their souls in their sea of consciousness had vanished without a trace. The ones who couldn't accept losing their Yuanli and souls the most were the third prince, Tianyi, and Meng Sheng from the Meng family, the #1 aristocratic family in the Emperor Qin kingdom. No, this is impossible. How could I, Meng Sheng, lose my Yuanli and soul? Because of the fear in his heart, Meng Sheng, who had fallen to the ground, couldn't accept the result of losing his Yuanli and soul. After all, for the young disciples of their families, losing the Yuanli and soul that they relied on to survive was 100 times worse than losing their life. Tianyi, who had also suffered a heavy blow, was also filled with fear. However, his pride as a crown prince, as well as his powerful mental state cultivation, allowed him to drive away the panic in his heart and begin to think of a way to resolve his predicament. If there was anyone in the world who knew the most about poisons that could corrode Yuanli and soul, other than the 5 poison sect, it would be the Medicine King's Valley, which thrived on pills. Therefore, Tianyi signaled the strong people who were guarding his safety to leave for now. He walked directly to Xiang Wenxuan's side and greeted him respectfully. Junior Qin Tianyi greets Senior Xiang. Your Highness is too courteous. Xiang Wenxuan, who was well versed in the ways of the world, didn't dare to accept Qin Tianyi's greeting. He hurriedly dodged and returned the greeting. Senior Xiang, I'm sure you understand the situation here. Does Senior have any good ideas? At this moment, Qin Tianyi didn't care about the red tape and directly asked his purpose. Your Highness, can you allow this old man to take a closer look? Xiang Wenxuan, who had always been shrewd, didn't take on everything to show off. Instead, he solemnly asked for a check. Please go ahead. Qin Tianyi didn't have any objections to this. Instead, he needed great cooperation. Raising his head and looking around, Xiang Wenxuan's gaze landed on one of the few warriors who was only a martial master. Elder Feng, capture him. Qin Tianyi, who had been paying attention to Xiang Wenxuan, quickly discovered the target of Xiang Wenxuan's gaze. She knew that he wanted to examine the condition of others, find a way to detoxify, and then treat herself. In order to allow Xiang Wenxuan to experiment better, Qin Tianyi instructed the peak 7th grade martial saint expert. In a flash, he appeared beside the martial master who had suddenly lost his elemental energy and looked extremely depressed. Then, like grabbing a little chick, he brought the martial master in front of Xiang Wenxuan. Although Xiang Wenxuan wasn't too happy about this, he didn't say anything. Instead, he carefully inspected the martial master's body. The more Xiang Wenxuan examined, the more his brows furrowed. He took out a pitch-black pill from his storage ring and fed it to the martial master. Then, he used his divine sense to observe the effects of the pill. However, when he saw the elixir that contained ordinary poison get swallowed by the martial master's dantian the moment it entered his body, his expression changed slightly. Immediately after, he took out another elixir that emitted a fishy smell and forced it into the martial master's mouth. The result was the same as the first elixir that contained ordinary poison. The poison produced by the elixir was directly swallowed by the martial master's dantian. Xiang Wenxuan lowered his head and pondered for a while. Then, he took out a red pill that was as red as blood. It clearly contained a huge amount of poison. Then, he gritted his teeth and fed it to the martial master. In the end, the result was the same as the first two elixirs. The poison produced by the elixir was directly swallowed by the martial master's dantian. Originally, when the martial master saw Xiang Wenxuan take out the third red pill, he thought that this pill had a special origin. He had already closed his eyes and waited for death to descend. However, in the end, not only did he not die from the poison, he didn't even feel any pain from the poison acting up. Opening his eyes, the martial master looked at Xiang Wenxuan with a face full of confusion. He didn't understand why the poison didn't kill him. Indicating for the martial master to stand to the side, Xiang Wenxuan's gaze fell on a martial ancestor realm cultivator present. Capture him. Qin Tianyi, who had been paying attention to Xiang Wenxuan, continued to instruct Senior Feng. After experimenting with different poison pills, the result was the same as the martial master realm cultivator. The only difference was that the martial ancestor realm cultivator's dantian not only swallowed the poison produced by the poison pill, but also the sea of consciousness, which nurtured the spiritual soul, also swallowed the poison produced by the poison pill. There was no need to use martial kings and martial monarchs to experiment. Xiang Wenxuan already knew the damage caused by the poison rain after it entered the body. After that, Xiang Wenxuan sat down cross-legged. As he carefully recalled the detoxification methods he was familiar with, he took out spiritual herbs of different attributes from his storage ring. There were spiritual herbs that could increase cultivation, and there were also spiritual herbs that contained poison. Then, he tried to refine a rumored elixir. Yu Haoran nodded in agreement with Xiang Wenxuan's method of testing the poison rain's power and effects on cultivators of different realms. Actually, most elixirs and alchemists had a misconception about how to detoxify unknown poisons. That was to analyze and detoxify the poison. Although this method was not wrong, it could easily cause a lack of time. In the end, it could cause the poison to explode and the poisoned person to die. Although using poison to fight poison could cause the poison to explode in advance, or change the toxicity of the poison, through this method, one could basically understand the toxicity of the poison in the poisoned person in the shortest amount of time. From there, one could find a way to detoxify the poison in time. However, although Xiang Wenxuan's method of testing the poison rain was correct, based on his understanding of the way of poison, it would be difficult for him to find a way to detoxify the poison rain. Even if he invited the experts of the 5 poison sect who were good at using poison, it would be difficult to detoxify the poison rain in a short amount of time. In the end, it was because he had integrated his own methods of the way of poison into the poison rain. Seeing that Xiang Wenxuan had already begun to refine the detoxification elixir after careful consideration, Yu Haoran did not appear for the time being. Instead, he carefully looked at the poisoned people on the scene. In the end, he found a martial master who had not originally participated in Ru Yun's auction, but because he had said something to humiliate Ru Yun, he was deliberately targeted by Ru Yin. Chapter 552. Hidden Art Pavilion. You, what are you trying to do? When he saw Yu Haoran walking towards him and the black bear behind him, the martial master retreated as he asked in alarm, "What are you doing?" Not to mention that he had lost his origin power after being hit by the Snake Beauty's poisonous rain and was reduced to a defenseless ordinary person. Even if he was in perfect condition, he would still not be a match for a rank 5, 9th grade black bear. "What are you shouting for?" Yu Haoran glared and scolded gloomily. Afterwards, he signaled the black bear to press down on the opponent and took a drop of blood from his finger. First, he used his sight and smell to confirm that the poisonous rain had reached his target. Then, he used his taste to identify it. Finally, he confirmed that the poisonous rain that he had mixed with the Snake Beauty's poison in his previous life already possessed 70% of the power of the poison pill he had refined using the Snake Beauty's poison. "Do you want to recover your lost origin power?" Yuhauran asked with a face full of smiles as he signaled the black bear to let go of the opponent. "Even in my dreams." Nodding his head, the martial master looked at Yuhauran with a face full of anticipation. Although he didn't know Yuhauran's background, he was envious and jealous of the fact that he could tame a rank 5, 9th grade black bear at such a young age. At the same time, he respected Yuhauran's methods and courage to test the poison with his own body. Therefore, he didn't look down on Yuhauran even though he was young. Instead, he looked forward to the youth in front of him being able to help him. "Just you wait." Yuhauran signaled the martial master to stay where he was, then signaled He Xiong to stand guard for him. He then sat down cross-legged and took out 9 stalks of spirit herbs that could increase one's cultivation and strength, as well as 9 stalks of poisonous spirit herbs from his storage ring. Immediately after, he took out the Saint-grade pill furnace left behind by the Saint Elixir Wondrous Venerate and started refining the antidote for the poisonous rain. Stalk after stalk of spiritual herbs were thrown into the pill furnace. Using origin power to activate the pill fire in the furnace, he refined and purified the spiritual liquid at the slowest speed possible. Then, he used a unique refining method to condense and form the pill. Even so, in less than 20 minutes, 9 sparkling and translucent pills the size of longans flew out of the pill furnace. With a wave of his sleeve, he collected the 9 pills and placed them into a pill bottle. Then, he took out a pill and swallowed it. He carefully felt the medicinal power of the pill so that he could better carry out his plan. "Take it." Yuhauran nodded his head in satisfaction. Although the pill he had just refined was able to neutralize the poison, it could only neutralize 1/9 of the poison. Then, he took out a pill and tossed it to the martial master. Yuhauran had already proven that the elixir was harmless by consuming it himself. Therefore, the martial master who received the elixir immediately swallowed it. 3 seconds later, the martial master felt a trace of origin power emerge from his dantian. His face immediately revealed an expression of ecstasy. However, the ecstasy on his face only lasted for a minute before it was replaced by doubt. This was because the origin power that emerged from his dantian had reached the peak of 9th grade martial master. No matter how he activated his mental cultivation method or directly absorbed the spiritual qi in the spirit stone, he could not continue to increase the origin power in his dantian. "Senior, why is the origin power in my dantian only recovered to about 10%? The martial master asked anxiously. Yuhauran nodded and said with a smile on his face, "The poison in the Snake Beauty's fangs is called seal crack. It is ranked 78th on the Profound Sky Continent's 100 poison ranking. If it wasn't because Ru-Yin was afraid of angering Emperor Qin and diluted the seal crack's poison, you, a mere martial master, would have turned into a pool of blood long ago. Senior, I understand everything you just said. I just want to ask why the detoxification pill you refined can only recover about 10% of my origin power." Seeing that Yuhauran only explained the power of the Snake Beauty's poison and did not mention the detoxification pill's effect, the martial master could not help but ask, "What's the hurry?" Yuhauran glared fiercely at the other party and continued to explain. "Even if it is diluted, the seal crack's poison is still very strong. It is definitely not something that 1 or 2 detoxification pills can neutralize." After saying this, Yuhauran pressed his hand on the other party's dantian and carefully felt it for a while before explaining. "In your situation, you still need to take 8 detoxification pills to completely neutralize the seal crack's poison. Senior, didn't you just refine 9 detoxification pills?" Thinking that although Yuhauran refined 9 detoxification pills, He had just used one to test the effects of the detoxification pill. He quickly changed his words. No, I refined 8 detoxification pills. That's right, I did refine 9 detoxification pills. Apart from the one I swallowed, and the one I just gave you, there are still 7 detoxification pills left. Nodding his head, Yuhauran pretended to be puzzled as he looked at the other party. I don't know if Senior can give the remaining 7 detoxification pills to Junior. Opening his mouth to ask for all the remaining detoxification pills was somewhat embarrassing for a martial master who was not very thick-skinned. However, in order to quickly recover his origin power, he could only thicken his skin and ask for it. Junior. Hearing the other party directly ask for the detoxification pills, Yuhauran immediately pretended to be distressed and said, "It's not like you didn't see the process of me refining the detoxification pills just now. Not to mention how precious the 9 stalks of spiritual medicine that can directly increase one's cultivation and strength are. Just the 9 stalks of spiritual medicine that contain poison are all rare spiritual medicine in the world. The 9 detoxification pills that I refined just now have already consumed half of my spiritual medicine reserve. My heart hurts. Senior, name a price." Every time he opened his mouth, he would only talk about how precious the spiritual medicine used to refine the detoxification pills were. The martial master was not a fool. How could he not understand the meaning behind Yuhauran's words? Therefore, he directly asked Yuhauran to name a price. Seeing that the other party was so tactful, Yuhauran chuckled lightly. Then, he directly took out the 7 detoxification pills that he had just put away and pretended to be generous. "Junior, the detoxification pills that I gave you just now are considered experimental product. I won't charge any fees. As for the remaining 7 detoxification pills, you can name a price." Actually, Yuhauran had quite a lot of the spiritual medicine needed to refine the detoxification pills in his storage ring and Victor. Although he did not dare to say that he could save everyone present, saving a third of the people would not be a problem. Chapter 553. Hidden Art Loft. Senior, although I have some family assets, you know my cultivation. I have no right to speak in the family, so I can't use the family's resources. Therefore, I can only take out 300,000 8th-stage first-grade spirit stones at most. Directly asking him to name a price was even more vicious than asking for an exorbitant price. However, now that he had a favor to ask of the other party, he could only suppress the dissatisfaction in his heart and tell Yuhauran about his situation, as well as his identity, to let Yuhauran decide whether to make the deal. 300,000 is not even enough to buy half a stalk of spiritual medicine. Yuhauran pretended to be in a difficult position as he spoke. Actually, when Yuhauran chose the other party as the first person he saved, he knew that the other party would not be able to take out that many spirit stones. The reason why he chose to save him first was because he had his own thoughts. After pretending to be deep in thought for a while, Yuhauran spoke directly. "How about this? I know that you're not doing well. I'm afraid that the resources worth 300,000 8th-level spirit stones are for you to break through to the martial ancestor realm. If I accept these spirit stones, it will definitely delay your breakthrough to the martial ancestor realm, and even ruin your future as a peerless expert." At this point, Yuhauran threw the pill bottle containing the 7 antidote pills to the other party and continued speaking. "I don't need your spirit stones or resources. I only need you to do 2 things for me. Please speak." After receiving the pill bottle containing the antidote pills, the martial master did not immediately swallow the pills, nor did he reveal a happy smile on his face. Instead, he asked solemnly, "The first thing is to use the 7 pills I just gave you to help me announce the method to cure the beauty snake venom rain. The second thing is to use the opportunity of curing the beauty snake venom rain to help me collect the precious spiritual medicine in Xianyang City. Hearing Yu Haoran's two conditions, the martial master thought for a while, then looked straight into Yu Haoran's eyes and asked, "Then, what about the poison in my body? After the matter is settled, I will give you the remaining 8 detoxification pills." Yu Haoran promised. "My surname is Hu, and my given name is Bing. I come from a mediocre Hu family in the north of Xianyang City. The strongest person in the family is the first elder, who is at the peak of the 7th grade of the martial royal realm." Although the martial master didn't directly reply to Yu Haoran's request, his detailed self-introduction indicated that he agreed to work for Yu Haoran. "My name is Yu Haoran. I'm from the second-rate sect, the 100 Chi Gate. I'm currently the vice-sect master. I've come to Xianyang City to participate in the Qin Alliance Conference. I'm currently staying in the Qingya Pavilion of the Qingyuan Guild Hall." After introducing himself in detail, Yu Haoran turned around and left the Hidden Art Pavilion. As for the spiritual stones for the 3 auction items, he believed that Feng Yun and Jiang Yan, who were poisoned by the beautiful snake's poison, would deliver them to him without taking a single cent. Seeing Yu Haoran turn around and leave, Hu Bing lowered his head and looked at the pills in his hand. A bitter smile appeared on his face as he sighed. "Although I, Hu Bing, don't have a high cultivation, there aren't many people who can convince me. Yu Haoran, you're the second person who can convince me. You're amazing." The agreement just now didn't include any promises made to each other, nor did it include an oath made according to the rules of heaven. Hu Bing could have taken the detoxification pills for himself and left Xianyang City temporarily. After Yu Haoran finished participating in the Qin Alliance Conference and had to leave Xianyang City, he could have swaggered back. However, Yu Haoran had used his unique alchemy method to refine the detoxification pills that required 9 pills to completely detoxify the beautiful snake's poison. If he dared to keep the detoxification pills for himself, he would only be able to recover less than 90% of his origin power without 1 detoxification pill. Under such circumstances, it would be impossible for him to break through to the martial ancestor realm. Furthermore, judging from Yu Haoran's alchemy method and speed when he was refining the detoxification pills in front of him, Hu Bing knew that Yu Haoran's alchemy cultivation was probably not inferior to that of the pill emperor with a broken arm, Xiang Wenshuan, who was still refining pills. Therefore, Hu Bing was even more worried that the lack of 1 detoxification pill would cause the poison in his body to mutate. The final outcome might be a fate worse than death. Therefore, Yu Haoran did not need any means to restrain him. Just by relying on the missing antidote pill, Yu Haoran was able to firmly control him. How could he not be convinced by such means? Sigh. Hu Bing couldn't help but sigh. He raised his head and looked around. Due to his personality and background, he tried his best to stay away from the crowd when he escaped from the destroyed auction house. At the same time, everyone's attention was focused on the pill emperor with a broken arm, who was refining the detoxification pill. As a result, Yu Haoran's refining of pills and their discussion just now didn't attract anyone's attention. Taking a deep breath, he walked toward the pill emperor with a broken arm who was refining the detoxification pill. At the same time, he was thinking about how to perfectly complete the task Yu Haoran had given him. After standing still 20 meters away from the pill emperor with a broken arm in a safe zone, Hu Bing closed his eyes and didn't act rashly for the time being. Now, he still needed to wait. He needed to wait until the pill emperor with a broken arm, Xiang Wenshuan's detoxification pill, failed to cure the snake beauty's poison. Only then could he announce that Yu Haoran had the ability to cure the snake beauty's poison. The waiting time wasn't very long. It was only a little more than 10 minutes. As the pill emperor with a broken arm, Xiang Wenshuan shouted and formed the core. 5 Longan-sized pills flew out of the pill furnace and were put away by Xiang Wenxuan. Shaking his head, Hu Bing felt a little disappointed at the pill emperor's level of refining the pills. Although Hu Bing's cultivation progress wasn't fast due to his talent and potential, his adventurous nature allowed him to dabble in many things, including the alchemy Dao. Similarly, due to his talent, he hadn't truly stepped into the alchemy Dao. However, he had his own unique understanding of the levels, standards, and abilities of alchemists. Judging from the speed of refining pills, the number of pills formed, and the color of the pills, the detoxification pill refined by the pill emperor with a broken arm was much worse than Yu Haoran's. "You, come here." After putting away the pill furnace, Xiang Wenxuan called out to the martial master who had been the first to check the Snake Beauty's poison. Although he didn't want to be Xiang Wenxuan's first test subject, he could only sigh and walk over to Xiang Wenxuan dejectedly under the watchful gazes of the crowd. "Here," Xiang Wenxuan said as he handed over the detoxification pill he had just refined. "If I die, I die." The martial master reached out and took the detoxification pill from Xiang Wenxuan. Then, he encouraged himself before swallowing the detoxification pill. After waiting for a full minute, he still didn't die. His body didn't feel any abnormalities either. Chapter 554. Hidden Elegance Loft. AI. As a peak pill emperor, Xiang Wenxuan did not need to check carefully to know that the antidote he had just refined was useless against the Snake Beauty's poison. Shaking his head and sighing, Xiang Wenxuan turned and walked in front of Qin Wui, his tone full of apology. "Your Highness, I am very sorry. Regarding the Snake Beauty's poison, this old man is powerless. Senior Xiang, can't you think of other methods, or send a message to the Medicine King Valley and ask if the valley's pill masters have any methods?" Qin Tianyi asked, unwilling to give up. "Your Highness, in terms of pill Dao cultivation, there are many in the valley who surpass this old man. However, in terms of understanding of poison, I'm afraid that even the Valley Lord and the Great Elder are inferior to me." Shaking his head, Xiang Wenxuan said with a bitter smile. Then, he suggested, "However, Your Highness, with the strength and influence of the Grand Qin Empire, you're entirely capable of asking the poison experts of the 5 poison sect. I presume they ought to have a way to remove or alleviate the toxicity of the beauty snake's poison." This. Facing Xiang Wenxuan's suggestion, Qin Tianyi really did not know how to answer. Firstly, the 5 poison sect was in the distant southern border, close to billions of kilometers away from the Emperor Qin. Even if a peak 9th grade martial saint traveled day and night, a round trip would take close to 2 months. In such a long time, no one knew whether the Snake Beauty's poison would flare up. Secondly, it was precisely because the 5 poison sect was too far away from the Grand Qin Empire that both sides didn't have any exchange of benefits, nor did they have any conflicts of interest. They weren't very familiar with each other, so no one knew if the 5 poison sect would dispatch a poison Dao expert to assist them. Could it be that I, the 3rd prince of the Emperor Qin's kingdom, the one who will inherit the throne in the future, the one who will lead millions of people to conquer the world, will fall just like this? Looking up at the blue sky, Qin Tianyi was like a defeated person, her heart filled with endless frustration and loss. "Third brother, you don't need to worry. I will go to the palace now and beg Father to help you remove the poison in your body." Feeling Qin Tianyi gradually losing her fighting spirit, Ling Fei said with a sad expression. "Ninth sister, thank you." Looking at Ling Fei lovingly, Qin Tianyi shook her head and stopped her from pleading with Emperor Qin. Not to mention whether or not Emperor Qin could neutralize the Snake Beauty's poison, just based on his current situation, he was afraid that the court officials and his brothers would not let him get close to his father. There was only one reason. He was afraid that the poison in his body would infect Emperor Qin, who had the body of 10,000 sovereigns. Turning her head to look at Meng Xing, who was still sitting in the dust, Qin Tianyi reached out and pulled Ling Fei's hand, intending to leave Hidden Art Pavilion. At this moment, Hu Bing, who felt that it was about time, suddenly walked in front of Xiang Wenxuan. He handed over a detoxification pill that he had prepared in advance to Xiang Wenxuan and said with a respectful expression, "Senior Pill Sovereign, please take a look at this pill and see if it can neutralize the Snake Beauty's poison." How could a mere martial master realm cultivator's detoxification pill be able to neutralize the poison that was ranked 78th on the Tianxian continent's 100 poison ranking? Therefore, Xiang Wenxuan originally did not want to pay attention to Hu Bing, who had suddenly stepped forward. However, when he inadvertently smelled the special scent of the pill in Hu Bing's hand, his expression changed slightly. He quickly took the pill from Hu Bing's hand and carefully observed it. After observing for almost a minute, Xiang Wenxuan stared at Hu Bing with a serious expression and asked, "Young man, who gave you this detoxification pill?" As the hand-broken pill sovereign, whose cultivation in the art of alchemy was already at the peak of the Grandmaster realm, he could tell that this pill had just been refined just by looking at the color and scent of the pill. Moreover, the alchemist who had refined this pill was not inferior to him in terms of alchemy. There were not many alchemists in the Tianxian continent, and those who had reached the Grandmaster realm in the art of alchemy were even rarer. Therefore, everyone knew each other and understood the characteristics of each other's pills. However, this pill was refined using a method that he had never seen before. In other words, he did not know the alchemist who had refined this pill. However, in the entire Tianxian continent, regardless of whether it was a wandering alchemist or an alchemist from the alliance of the Devil Dao, Xiang Wenxuan knew all of them. Therefore, compared to whether this pill could neutralize the Snake Beauty's poison, Xiang Wenxuan was more concerned about who the owner of this pill was. He was looking forward to meeting this alchemist whose alchemy skills were not inferior to his own. The owner who gave me this medicinal pill once warned me not to reveal his origins for the time being. First, I'll let you take a look at the quality of this medicinal pill and whether or not it can neutralize the Snake Beauty's poison. Faced with Xiang Wenxuan's shout, Hu Bing replied without the slightest bit of fear. Huff! Xiang Wenxuan took a deep breath and suppressed his urge to meet the alchemist grandmaster. He shouted at the martial master who had tested his detoxification pill. "You, come here!" Seeing that he had become Xiang Wenxuan's test subject for the third time, the martial master felt like dying at this moment. If it weren't for the fact that he had lost his Yuan Li and was unable to commit suicide by severing his own arteries, he would have definitely expressed his righteousness to Xiang Wenxuan and everyone present. After expressing that he was not afraid of threats, he would have generously sacrificed himself. Of course, if it was just an if, the unarmed and defenseless Qin Wui could only walk in front of Xiang Wenxuan with a dejected expression. Then, he took the pill from Xiang Wenxuan's hand and swallowed it without hesitation. In just 3 seconds, the originally dejected martial master's face immediately revealed a trace of pleasant surprise as he shouted, "Yuan Li, I can feel the Yuan Li in my dantian." Qin Wui, who had been walking away with disappointment, suddenly heard the martial master's ecstatic shouts behind him. He hurriedly turned around and stared at the martial master. In fact, it was not only Qin Tianyi. Everyone present, regardless of whether it was those who had been struck dumb on the spot or those who had already accepted the cruel reality like Qin Tianyi, all raised their heads and turned around at the same time to stare at the martial master who had just shouted to recover his Yuan Li. After a minute, the Yuan Li that had recovered with great difficulty suddenly stopped moving when it had recovered more than 10%. This made the martial master very puzzled. Following that, he took out a level 7 spirit stone from his storage bag, intending to use the spirit qi within the spirit stone to completely recover his lost Yuan Li. Seeing that the martial master intended to use the spirit stone to recover his yuanli, a disdainful sneer flashed across Hu Bing's heart. This was because he had already tried this method long ago, but it was completely useless. Chapter 555. Hidden Art Pavilion. Senior Alchemy Emperor, what's going on? The martial master looked up at Xiang Wenxuan and asked with a puzzled expression. Xiang Wenxuan, who had been using his divine sense to observe the entire process of the detoxification pill, was also frowning. He couldn't figure out the situation in the martial master's body. Then, he turned his head to look at Hu Bing and asked, "Do you still have that detoxification pill on you?" "Here." Hu Bing took out a detoxification pill that he had prepared and handed it to Xiang Wenxuan. Xiang Wenxuan didn't use others to test the effects of the detoxification pill. Instead, he swallowed it himself. With regards to Xiang Wenxuan's actions, Hu Bing and everyone present couldn't help but feel boundless admiration in their hearts. After all, the detoxification pill that could detoxify the snake beauty's poison had a certain degree of toxicity. To be able to test the poison with his own body showed that Xiang Wenxuan was a person who was truly obsessed with alchemy. A person like him might not be as good as those geniuses and monsters in terms of martial arts, but his achievements in alchemy would definitely surpass those geniuses and monsters. Profound alchemy techniques, exquisite and peerless methods to intercept spiritual energy. This person's cultivation may not be as high as mine, but his understanding of alchemy has already far surpassed mine. Xiang Wenxuan opened his eyes and sighed with a face full of admiration. Senior Xiang, could the detoxification pill just now be able to detoxify the snake beauty's poison? Qin Tianyi wasn't interested in Xiang Wenxuan's sigh. What he wanted to know the most was whether the detoxification pill provided by Hu Bing could restore his origin power and divine soul. Qin Tianyi's question was also the concern of those who had been poisoned by the snake beauty's poison. They all looked at Xiang Wenxuan nervously, hoping to get the answer they were looking for from his mouth. Yes. Xiang Wenxuan nodded and confirmed. Boy, do you still have any detoxification pills on you? If you give them to me now, I'll guarantee you a life of wealth and safety. After receiving Xiang Wenxuan's confirmation, Qin Tianyi immediately made a promise to Hu Bing. Boy, give me your detoxification pill. I can let you become a member of the Meng clan and enjoy the treatment of a direct descendant. Meng Xing, whose status and position was second only to Qin Tianyi, also made a promise that made countless people envious and jealous. Little friend, if you can give us the antidote, our heavenly fragrance pavilion can give you unimaginable spirit stones, pills, beauties, and cultivation resources. Feng Yun, who also saw hope, hurriedly led Jiang Yan to promise Hu Bing. Young man. Friend. As long as the people present had a certain amount of power and wealth, and had been poisoned by the beauty snake's venom, they all made promises to Hu Bing that he would never be able to make in his entire life. But in the face of these people's promises, Hu Bing turned a blind eye to Xiang Wenxuan. He wanted to see if Xiang Wenxuan could identify the flaw in Yu Haoran's detoxification pill. The people who were originally respectful to him immediately threw him to the back of their minds after receiving his confirmation. While Xiang Wenxuan felt the hypocrisy of the world, he had no choice but to do his duty and remind them. After all, he had personally confirmed the efficacy of the detoxification pill, but he had yet to clearly explain the flaws of the detoxification pill. Everyone, please listen to this old man. Unfortunately, the people who were anxious to obtain the detoxification pill were not in the mood to pay attention to Xiang Wenxuan, so no one paid attention to his reminder. Xiang Wenxuan, who had been treated coldly, could not help but feel a trace of anger rise in his heart. If it were not for the fact that he wanted to see the pill master who had refined the detoxification pill through Hu Bing, he would have already left. Everyone, please listen to me. Hu Bing, who had been looking at Xiang Wenxuan, naturally saw the anger that flashed across his face. Xiang Wenxuan was the key to successfully completing the task given to him by Yu Haoran, so he was worried that Xiang Wenxuan would leave angrily, so Hu Bing hurriedly signaled for everyone to be quiet. Speak. As the most distinguished person present, Qin Wui was duty-bound to be the one to talk to Hu Bing. The person who gave me the detoxification pill once said that the detoxification pill had an unavoidable flaw. Hu Bing said solemnly. Elder Xiang, is that true? After hearing Hu Bing's reminder, Qin Tianyi subconsciously turned his head and asked Xiang Wenxuan. Xiang Wenxuan was finally able to see the humanity of the imperial family. Furthermore, the Medicine King Valley had a special status and was at the peak of the Grandmaster realm, so he did not need to curry favor with any power. Therefore, his originally polite attitude towards Qin Wui was much more casual. The detoxification pill refined by this pill master cannot be said to have a flaw. It should be said that in order to better unleash the medicinal power of the detoxification pill, the medicinal power of the detoxification pill was distributed among the 9 pills. Seeing the confusion on everyone's faces, Xiang Wenxuan continued to explain. The meaning is very simple. The detoxification pill refined by this pill master can not only neutralize the snake beauty's poison, but also has no side effects. The only troublesome thing is that 9 detoxification pills are required to completely neutralize the snake beauty's poison in one's body and restore one's yuan li and soul. After hearing Xiang Wenxuan's more detailed explanation, everyone present heaved a sigh of relief. As long as they could neutralize the snake beauty's poison and regain the strength of a martial ancestor, martial king, martial emperor, and martial saint, they would be willing to take even 90 detoxification pills, let alone 9 detoxification pills. The only difference was that it would cost more. Young friend, 1 million level 8 spirit stones in exchange for 1 detoxification pill. Give me 126 detoxification pills first. The rich and overbearing Feng Yun took the initiative to make a request to purchase detoxification pills from Hu Bing. Furthermore, he had directly traded 126 detoxification pills in one go. The total value of 120 million level 8 spirit stones made Hu Bing secretly shocked. Feng Yun had no choice but to trade so many detoxification pills in one go. Deputy Pavilion Master Jiang Yin and his only granddaughter, Qiao Mei, had to neutralize the snake beauty's poison. The 3 martial saints were the foundation of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's hidden art yard. They had to maintain their peak strength at all times and neutralize the snake beauty's poison. Since the 3 martial sages were poisoned by the beauty snake's venom, the 8 martial emperors, who were also guarding the hidden art loft and had to deal with many of their troubles, couldn't disappoint these people. Therefore, he had directly traded 126 detoxification pills in one go. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.